deportation flight carrying migrants back to France as part of the government's one-in, one-out deal could take off in the next few minutes. Well, let's get more with our political correspondent, Mari Aurora, who joins us in the studio. Morning, Mari. So what do we know about these flights and this flight in particular this morning that we're expecting to take off?
So there is still a grey area around exactly what is happening, exactly who might be on those flights, if those flights will end up actually carrying migrants. There are still lots of things to be confirmed. But as we understand it, the Home Office is going to be returning small boats migrants to France this week. Could be flights as early as we say, this morning potentially, and could be several flights, maybe 3 or 4 flights this week. But that all-important moment, you know, we've been here before, almost. How many years ago was it when we were up at 6 a.m. Watching that flight supposedly going to Rwanda, full of migrants that never actually took off the ground. So we need to wait until we actually get confirmation that people have been flown to France as part of this scheme, but that's what it looks like from what we are hearing here at Sky News. This deal, it's a pilot deal, remember, but it's going to be running until June 2026, and then they'll kind of evaluate it. It was signed in July, so it's taken a couple of months to kind of get up and running. And obviously, once people are flown to France, if that is confirmed this morning, asylum seekers will then be brought over to the UK on a legal route as a kind of one-in, one-out exchange programme. The difficulty, of course, is that some critics would argue it's not going to be one in, one out when you've had over 31,000 people crossing the Channel just this year alone. But nonetheless, the government is desperate for some good news. As we had reported just last week, immigration is now the #1 issue for voters, according to some polling by YouGov, above the economy. And clearly the government is trying to demonstrate that they are listening to the British public and also able to actually deliver on promises around immigration. But obviously we still need to wait and see whether they manage to pull it off.
Yes, it will all be in the detail, won't it, Mari? But looking ahead to this week, last week was a big week, wasn't it, for Labour and Keir Starmer? This week, set to be even bigger, potentially, with that state visit from Donald Trump and the issues around Lord Mandelson being sacked. I know you were on holiday while this was all happening.
I go away for 1 week and the whole government falls apart.
We just needed you here in Westminster. But what can we expect this week? Because it will be a challenge. There will be questions about Jeffrey Epstein, but I suppose the government will be trying to get a handle on those questions quite early on in the week, potentially.
Yeah, I think this week looks to potentially be a little bit uncomfortable for the Prime Minister. As you say, because of the state visit that we have coming up with Donald Trump, we're in a position now where the Prime Minister sacks Peter Mandelson for, to an extent, his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, while we're in a situation where there are still questions swirling around Donald Trump and Donald Trump's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. And so you can imagine some of the questions that are potentially going to be fired at those two leaders in that press conference later in the week. And so there is a position now where Labour MPs are increasingly dissatisfied and uncomfortable with the operation in Number 10, with some of the decisions being made, perhaps by the Prime Minister and those around him. And that febrile atmosphere is, to an extent, also has been slightly, let's say, exacerbated by Peter Kyle, the new business secretary's comments yesterday on Sky News, where he talked about the decision to hire Peter Mandelson as essentially kind of being a risk that they believed was worth taking because of his talents and his abilities and his strengths as a politician and a political manoeuvrer. And that was before they knew the full facts, the government says. And so you now have a situation where there's, open discussion about whether Andy Burnham might be looking for a seat for a by-election to try and come in and make problems for Keir Starmer. You've still got that deputy leadership race ongoing at the moment. Tories are calling for an immediate release of the Mandelson-Epstein files, as they call them. And we only have 2 days left of Parliament before we go into recess for party conference season, of course. And this is what's so difficult for the Prime Minister at the moment is he's really needing some success, some good news. He'll be hoping that will come through the immigration one-in, one-out scheme. But at a time when his party is, let's say, unhappy to say the least, he really needs to find a way to rally the troops ahead of that state visit and make that state visit a success.
All right, Mari, thank you so much for that. Excellent as always. Great to have you back too.
Nice to be back.
Now, Sudan has been torn apart by civil war for more than 2 years, leaving millions desperate for food and medical care. Well, Sky News has witnessed the dire humanitarian situation of those fleeing the fighting. Our correspondent, Yusra El-Bagir, has met survivors of the ongoing siege of the regional capital, Al-Fashir, in North Darfur.
These camps are full of horror stories that have been hidden from the world. Thousands of people who fled Al-Fashir and lost loved ones to brutal violence and famine. Some arrived days ago, and some have been here for months.
We gave them money, but the Rapid Support Forces took some women away who couldn't pay into a room. We don't know if they were beaten or raped. They threatened us, and we got money out. We couldn't sleep from the sounds of the men being whipped and robbed nearby. All my brothers are trapped there. There is no one to take care of me.
And we will bring you Yusra's full report on the situation inside North Darfur a little later this hour. That's at around 6:30. Do stay with us. Elsewhere, the prime suspect in the Madeleine McCann case, Christian B, has refused to be interviewed by British police about her disappearance in 2007. A 49-year-old is expected to be released from a German prison this week, having served time for a separate, unrelated crime. Let's talk more about this story. Alice Porter joins us this morning. So Christian B, he's being released in the next few days, but the Met Police say he's still a prime suspect.
Yes, that's right. Christian B has been serving a 7-year sentence for the rape of an elderly woman in Praia de Luz in 2007. And he's due to be released, we understand, in Germany on Wednesday. So to an extent, the time is ticking now for authorities, because he has been the prime suspect for a number of countries, including German authorities. German authorities have been investigating the disappearance of Madeleine McCann for some time, and he has been very much their prime suspect. Now, he has not engaged with the German authorities in terms of they've tried to question him about her disappearance, and he hasn't engaged with them and hasn't answered their questions as well. But of course, the Met have an ongoing Operation Grange, an ongoing investigation into Madeleine McCann, who of course disappeared in 2007 on a family holiday to Praia de Luz in Portugal when she was 3 years old. Now, the Met have confirmed that Christian B remains a suspect for them. They requested an interview with Christian B, but that was refused. They say, we will nevertheless continue to pursue any viable lines of inquiry. And they have had a number of searches that have been carried out by German, Portuguese and British authorities since her disappearance. The latest actually took place in June of this year. So you can see this is still very much an active investigation for a number of different authorities. Now, Christian B has always denied any involvement in her disappearance. He spent time in the Praia de Luz area near where she went missing between 2000 and 2017. But as I say, that we still have, Christian B has said that he will not have any more conversation with the Metropolitan Police about her disappearance.
All right, Alice, thank you so much. Appreciate that. Let's take a look at some of the day's other stories this Monday. And a man in his 30s has been arrested. This is in connection with an alleged racially motivated rape of a woman in the Oldbury area in the West Midlands. This happened last Tuesday. It follows a march yesterday, which was organised by members of the Sikh community in support of the woman. The lawyer representing the families of 3 young girls murdered at a Taylor Swift-themed party in Southport last year has told Sky News new evidence revealed missed opportunities to stop the attacker. Today, the parents of BB King, Elsie Stankham and Alice da Silva Aguiar will give evidence to the inquiry examining how Axel Rudabakana was able to carry out the attack and identify lessons to avoid a repeat.
The families remain traumatised. It's been approximately 14 months since this horrific attack occurred. Within that time, they've conducted themselves with incredible dignity but as a consequence of that, they present extremely well, but the reality is that it's when they close their front door, they remain traumatised, and this inquiry is going to continue with that re-traumatisation for another 12 months at least.
14 NHS trusts are being investigated over serious failings in maternity and neonatal care dating back more than 15 years. Baroness Amos will lead the review, which was announced by the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, earlier this year. The Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynaecologists has responded to the announcement, saying this: there's no doubt today's announcement will create real anxiety among women, families and staff at the 14 trusts selected. It's vital that the review process now brings everyone together with compassion, a commitment to transparency and appropriate support. They go on to say too many women and babies are not getting the safe, compassionate care they deserve, and the maternity workforce is on its knees with staff leaving the profession. The RCOG is committed to working with the government, our members and women to support the investigation to rebuild a world-class maternity system. Constance Martin and Mark Gordon will be sentenced later today over the death of their newborn baby, Victoria. The couple went on the run for 54 days in 2023 after their 4 other children were put into care, sparking a nationwide manhunt. Well, baby Victoria's body was found inside a shopping bag in a disused shed. And the trial of a former paratrooper charged with 2 murders on Bloody Sunday begins today. Soldier F, who cannot be identified, is accused of murdering James Ray and William McKinney at a civil rights march in Derry in 1972. Well, the former soldier is also charged with the attempted murders of 5 others. Britain and the US are set to sign a nuclear power agreement. This is all during President Trump's state visit this week. The deal aims to boost secure investment for new nuclear plants, supporting Britain's £14 billion plan for Sizewell C. And a yellow weather warning is in place until 6 o'clock tonight for most of England and Wales, with gusts expected to reach up to 70 miles per hour in exposed areas. Of course, travel delays are expected, and commuters have been advised to check rail conditions and public transport timetables before heading out. Now let's talk about the Emmys, because British actor Owen Cooper has made history, becoming the youngest ever male winner of a prime-time Emmy. The 15-year-old was a breakout star in the Netflix series Adolescence, which dominated the ceremony, taking home a total of 6 awards. Our arts and entertainment correspondent Katie Spencer reports.
And the Emmy goes to Jack Thorne and Stephen Graham, Adolescence!
It was a show that broke viewing records and fueled countless conversations.
We never expected our little programme to have such a big impact, but we're really grateful that it did.
Police! What are you looking for?
This is Big Emmy winner, a British drama that was technically brilliant and left viewers reeling. Netflix's Adolescence, about a teen accused of murder and the rise of incel culture, taking home 6 awards, including one for Stephen Graham.
And the Emmy goes to Stephen Graham, Adolescence.
I'm just a mixed-race kid from a block of flats in a place called Kirby. So for me, to be here today in front of my peers and to be acknowledged by you is the utmost humbling thing I could ever imagine in my life.
The drama's 15-year-old star making history as the youngest ever male acting winner.
Standing up here is just, wow, it's just so surreal. It may have my name on this wall, but it really belongs to the people behind the camera, and Stephen and all the cast.
The Traitors.
A win too for another of British TV's biggest exports, reality show The Traitors, now the world's biggest selling format in the reality genre.
Thank you to our cast, our crazy cast, and our crew in Scotland who had to understand the concept that the Scottish summer is sometimes oxymoronic.
I am so excited about watching this trailer.
Seth Rogen's Hollywood satire, The Studio, dominated the comedy categories with its 4 wins.
I'm legitimately embarrassed by how happy this makes me.
And there were repeated references to CBS's purely financial decision to axe Stephen Colbert's The Late Show.
While I have your attention, is anyone hiring?
And the Emmy goes to The Late Show with Stephen Colbert.
While some have suggested the decision to ditch his popular show might also relate to Colbert's criticism of President Trump, all he said was this.
I have never loved my country more desperately. God bless America. Stay strong, be brave, and if the elevator tries to bring you down, go crazy and punch a higher floor. Woo!
So do you think it would be okay if we speak about it? I haven't done anything.
But really the night was deservingly dominated by a show that was by no means an easy watch. Adolescence's impact stretching way beyond the small screen. Its unflinching commitment to reflect our times, a reminder of the power of drama at its very best. Katie Spencer, Sky News.
Tributes have been paid to the former world champion boxer Ricky Hatton, who's died aged 46. Our sports correspondent Rob Harris looks back at Hatton's life and career.
Just seeing and listening to the fans who followed Ricky Hatton told you everything about his appeal.
Listen to the chants of there's only one Ricky Hatton.
He's the people's champion, oozing charisma, charming and connecting beyond boxing. Why tens of thousands of Brits descended on Las Vegas for blockbuster bouts. But never forgetting his working class roots in Manchester, never losing the common touch in the rise to the top.
I always said I'd be #1, and you know what? You, me loyal fans, deserve it as much as me. We did it together tonight.
The home of his beloved Manchester City, devastation on Derby Day. Tributes hours after the 46-year-old was found dead at his home. Fighting Juan Lascano here in 2008 brought the showman out in The Hitman, producing one of 45 career wins, one that meant more than most. The biggest undoubtedly came against Costa Zoo in 2005. Providing the platform for the Vegas mega fights against Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao.
Big whipping left hand, vicious punches, and Hatton's having to ship them all.
Both ended in defeats that Hatton struggled to cope with, spending 3 years out of the ring from 2009. The adulation and fame could seem overwhelming. To deal with the darkness, help was sought through therapy.
It snowballs and snowballs and snowballs. And I think the best thing I did after retiring and I got in such a bad way was go and speak to a stranger. He doesn't know me, I don't know him, and nobody knows I'm speaking to him.
He'd been retired 13 years since only a third career defeat. But in July, comeback plans were suddenly announced. And this was just 3 days ago, training to fight in December. He hoped getting back in shape would inspire those who have also dealt with depression and addiction.
He was an amazing fighter, such a lovely guy, had an amazing personality, drew in thousands and thousands of people who travelled thousands and thousands of miles to watch him, 40,000 people going out to Vegas to watch him box. He was a phenomenal attraction, both inside and outside the ring.
Police did not provide a cause of death, but said it's not being treated as suspicious, leaving boxing mourning.
How would you like to be remembered?
The world champion, that was one of us.
Ricky Hatton was the two-weight world champion who became a champion for mental health by being so open about his vulnerabilities while reaching the pinnacle of his sport. Rob Harris, Sky News.
After leading the coverage in Utah, Sky's James Matthews asked who is Tyler Robinson, the suspect in custody for Charlie Kirk's assassination in the latest episode of the Trump 100 podcast.
The questions, of course, quickly turn to who is this guy? Who's been arrested? What made him do it? And, of course, cue speculation, misinformation, different agendas being punted across social media. We will have hard information, more of it, on Tuesday when the charges are filed against Tyler Robinson. Governor Spencer Cox, well, he's given some detail today about the suspect. He told CNN in an interview that family members had told of how Robinson was deeply indoctrinated with leftist ideology. He said that Robinson lived with a transgender partner, that the FBI confirmed his roommate was a romantic partner, as he put it, a male transitioning to female, and he agreed that that part of Robinson's life was being looked at as possible motivation.
And you can scan the QR code, it's on the screen right now, to listen to that Trump 100 podcast. Still to come on The Breakfast Show, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio sits down with the Israeli Prime Minister this morning to simmer tensions after Israel struck Qatar. We'll also be discussing the stories making news today with Maury in our news review. That's at 6:45.
Some very familiar faces.
Go ahead. Mr. President, what can our Prime Minister say to you?
Sky News.
That's him. That's him.
He called you Daddy.
In the back.
We are
Ready.
And
Waiting.
For you, President Trump.
Next question.
So can I ask you, sir?
Don't miss a moment of President Trump's historic second state visit to the UK as we bring you live and continuous coverage.
Did you find it exciting?
Get the full story first on Sky News.
People that pod together, they have a little hive brain going on.
They've not had a good week.
I've had a good week.
There's a teaser there, a teaser.
Okay, nothing to see here. Drama over.
Full stop.
Anyway, we'll get to that.
She will be mortified. She's the first female chancellor.
I popped upstairs, made myself a cheese sandwich, and now I'm with you.
Annalise has come dressed in the magenta of electoral dysfunction. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
This is how you travel when the mafia wants to kill you.
He's almost given up his own freedom, but that's the price he's willing to pay.
Here, they don't just arrest and Ndrangheta mafia members, they also live among them.
Time after time, I've seen the devastating impact of extreme weather and climate change.
We don't have much snow at the moment.
They've had a warm spring and exceptionally hot summer, and that means they're expecting to lose more than 3 times the amount of ice than they usually do.
Flames are still forcing people from their homes and leaving many questioning their futures.
Here was my life. We have nothing. I can't say anything, it's so sad.
This disaster is testing the resolve of everyone on this island.
The only way out now is by boat.
Everything you see is devastated, and the misery being felt by people living here is repeated in towns and villages across Central Europe.
Sky News, get the full story first. Turkey is burying its dead. The loss is profound.
Whole families died in this collapse, generations wiped out. The violence has penetrated the heart of the city rather than being contained to the estates around the edge, and that speaks to the level of anger being felt here.
In Sweden, police have seized a lethal stash. This is just a small sample of the deadly arsenal taken off the streets.
This is an example of an advert, really. Anyone of any age could say, I'll do that for £1 million, and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes.
I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
Israel has intensified its military efforts in Gaza City, destroying at least 30 residential buildings and forcing thousands to flee the fighting. The escalation came ahead of a meeting between US Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel this morning, as the Trump administration seeks to simmer tensions in the region. Sally Lockwood reports from Jerusalem.
Against the backdrop of escalating tensions in the Middle East, Secretary of State Marco Rubio stood shoulder to shoulder with Benjamin Netanyahu at the Western Wall. A hastily arranged visit by America's top diplomat after an unprecedented attack by Israel in Qatar. Mr. Rubio's comments before leaving the US left little doubt this trip is damage control.
I'm going to get a much better understanding of what their plans are moving forward. What's happened has happened. Obviously, we were not happy about it. The president was not happy about it. Now we need to move forward and figure out what comes next.
It's hard to know what comes next after this. Israel's strike on Hamas residents in Doha has blown apart hope of a diplomatic breakthrough, attempting to kill the very people they're negotiating with over a ceasefire in Gaza, in a country hosting the critical talks. Instead, Qatar is now hosting Arab leaders for an emergency summit on the crisis. It's not yet clear how Gulf states will respond, but it's rocked regional security and American alliances. The concern being if Israel can bomb Qatar, then is anywhere off limits.
It's unclear to me the extent of pressure or seriousness with respect to those actions. As far as the U.S.-Israeli relationship, I'm sure Donald Trump has said repeatedly, not just in response to Benjamin Netanyahu's actions, but in response to Vladimir Putin's, that he's not happy with the situation. But as of, we're entering the 9th month of the Trump presidency. And just like the Biden administration, there's no evidence whatsoever that this administration is prepared to impose a single cost or consequence on Israel that normal humans would regard as significant or serious pressure.
Meanwhile, in Gaza City, Palestinians are enduring this. Israel demolishing high-rise buildings, wiping out tents that are all many families have left. An evacuation order is in place, but many can't afford to leave and have nowhere to go.
I've been looking for a car for 4 days. If I find a car, it will cost me $500, but I can't afford it.
It's hard to see how anything will improve in Gaza anytime soon. The ceasefire talks in tatters and the goodwill of Qatar sorely tested. Sally Lockwood, Sky News, Jerusalem.
Still to come on The Breakfast Show, we go inside one of the most cut-off regions of war-torn Sudan to witness the unfolding humanitarian crisis. And in sport, how England got the better of Scotland at the Women's Rugby World Cup.
People that pod together, they have a little hive brain going on.
They've not had a good week.
I've had a good week. There's a teaser there, a teaser.
OK, nothing to see here. Drama over.
Full stop.
Anyway, we'll get to that.
She will be mortified.
She's the first female chancellor.
I popped upstairs, made myself a cheese sandwich, and now I'm with you.
Annalise has come dressed in the magenta of electoral dysfunction. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
This is how you travel when the mafia wants to kill you.
He's almost given up his own freedom, but that's the price he's willing to pay.
Here, they don't just arrest and Ndrangheta mafia members, they also live among them. Time after time, I've seen the devastating impact of extreme weather and climate change.
We don't have much snow at the moment.
They've had a warm spring and exceptionally hot summer, and that means they're expecting to lose more than 3 times the amount of ice than they usually do. Flames are still forcing people from their homes and leaving many questioning their futures.
Here was my life. We have nothing. I can't say anything. It's so sad.
This disaster is testing the resolve of everyone on this island. The only way out now is by boat.
Everything you see is devastated, and the misery being felt by people living here is repeated in towns and villages across Central Europe.
Sky News, get the full story first. Turkey is burying its dead. The loss is profound. Whole families died in this collapse, generations wiped out. The violence has penetrated the heart of the city. Rather than being contained to the estates around the edge, And that speaks to the level of anger being felt here.
In Sweden, police have seized a lethal stash. This is just a small sample of the deadly arsenal taken off the streets.
This is an example of an advert, really. Anyone of any age could say, I'll do that for £1 million, and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes.
I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
Hello everyone, welcome back to The Breakfast Show. Coming up, we'll have your latest sporting headlines and we'll take a look at the stories making the front pages in our news review. But first, let's take a look at some of our top stories for you this morning. Sky News understands the first flights returning migrants to France, all part of Sir Keir Starmer's pilot's one in, one out scheme, could take off as early as this morning. It's hoped the policy will prevent future small boat crossings in the Channel. The prime suspect in the disappearance of Madeleine McCann has refused to be interviewed by the Metropolitan Police. Christian B is set for release from a German prison this week, but refused an attempt by British police to speak to him about the disappearance. Owen Cooper has become the youngest ever male winner of a Primetime Emmy after scooping the award for Outstanding Support Actor in a limited series. The 15-year-old breakout star of the hit show Adolescence was already the youngest ever nominee in the category before his historic win. Now, Sudan has been torn apart by civil war for more than 2 years, leaving millions desperate for food and medical care. Well, Sky News has witnessed the dire humanitarian situation of those fleeing the fighting. But how did it reach this point? Well, war broke out in the capital Khartoum in April 2023 between the Sudanese army and the Rapid Support Forces, a powerful paramilitary group. It's estimated 150,000 people have died in the conflict so far, and nearly 12 million people have been displaced. Armed violence spread across the country while the RSF captured large swathes of Darfur and laid siege on the last standing capital in the region, Al-Fasher. Well, our Africa correspondent Yusuf El-Bagir has been to North Darfur and she sent us this special report.
It's a drive towards desolation. The despair and suffering that has pushed millions to leave everything behind. Their camps line the edges of North Darfur, in the war-torn region of Western Sudan. We've just crossed into North Darfur, a place that's been virtually impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan. It's been ravaged by famine, ruthless armed conflict, and has been largely neglected by the world. Makeshift displacement shelters are clustered across the state. Inside, thousands are waiting for news from Al-Fasher, the besieged regional capital they risked their lives to escape.
We gave them money, but the Rapid Support Forces took some women away who couldn't pay into a room. We don't know if they were beaten or raped. They threatened us and we got money out. We couldn't sleep from the sounds of the men being whipped and robbed nearby. All my brothers are trapped there. There is no one to take care of me.
Stories like Zahra's are everywhere in this camp, from the youngest to the eldest, all survivors of the Rapid Support Forces fighting to capture their hometown. These camps are full of horror stories that have been hidden from the world. Thousands of people who fled Al-Fasher and lost loved ones to brutal violence and famine. Some arrived days ago and some have been here for months. All of them have told us that they're hoping the siege will be lifted and that they can return home. Even if the RSF ends their siege on Al-Fasher, nothing can erase the damage. Naldifa was heavily pregnant when she escaped the city's violence, and her newborn baby was blinded by conditions on the road. Hawa says she watched her 2 daughters get raped by the RSF in front of her and hasn't seen them since they fled in shame. Story after story of absolute brutality.
Weighing on the volunteers tasked with keeping faith alive.
I'm living in a state of emotional torture and have depression from the number of cases I have to deal with, to the point where I had a mental breakdown.
Do you feel neglect from the international community?
I direct my blame towards the international community. How can they talk about human rights? Where is the humanity?
The neglect is stark in this barren hospital yard, where doctors say there's been little outside support. The last functioning hospital in North Darfur cannot afford to offer subsidized treatment to the civilians fleeing areas of extreme violence.
We need this support, yes. Either medication, either you can give money to the victims or to the ill patient, but anyhow, we need support.
The maternity ward is full of empty beds, with few staff to clean them. In one of the beds, we find new mother Amani, who escaped Al-Fashir heavily pregnant and has just had a C-section delivery. Her brothers are still trapped there and don't know their new nephew has been born. The fight is ongoing for control of Al-Fashir and ultimately the fate of Darfur. With each battle, more and more women and children are finding their way here, without their husbands, fathers, and brothers.
Women with children, we keep asking them, where are the men? And then they tell us our men have been executed.
On the camp road, we come across a rare sight, a car full of young men who safely escaped the siege, but not without scars. A bullet grazed his chin. You can't even be upset, he says. There are stray bullets everywhere. His friend in the back was hit by shrapnel. They all believe Al-Fashir will collapse, not militarily, but from the sheer weight of humanitarian needs.
If it falls, all of Sudan will be finished. So much suffering.
These stories of torment are a dark warning for the world, of the inhumanity that runs rife when cries for help go ignored. Yusra al-Bagher, Sky News, North Darfur.
Now, former financier and Conservative peer Baroness Morrissey has warned that the Chancellor's tax policies are driving great people away. She told Wilfred Frost the government should cut taxes to encourage growth.
There's a sense of decay about the country that doesn't help. So definitely, I would reverse all the efforts on the fiscal front, the tax. She should cut taxes to stimulate growth. I know that's not what she's going to do, but if you're listening, Rachel, please think again, because it's counterproductive at this point. You're driving great people away.
She was speaking on the Master Investor podcast with Wilfred Frost, which is available to watch on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Let's take a look at your latest sport now.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report.
Sorry, I just have a German passport. Hopefully I can convince them and show them and prove them that I'm proud to be the English manager.
For only the third time in history, the FA have turned to a foreign manager to take charge of the men's England team. Thomas Tuchel follows in the footsteps of Sven-Göran Eriksson.
If we don't do results, of course, they will try to hang me, but even if I was an Englishman, they hang me. So that's...
And Fabio Capello.
A winner with a capital W. That was the template. This is the man.
When the news about Tuchel broke, there was a mixed media reaction. Some in Tuchel see a Champions League winning manager and the best candidate available if you want to win a World Cup. That's certainly how the FA bosses view it. But for others, there's a more fundamental principle here. They believe that an Englishman should be in charge of England.
Well, I was hoping we'd get an English manager, but when you look at the choices, there are very few, aren't they?
The jobs are so prestigious and there's so much money in the job.
that people are tempted to spread the net wide.
There's nothing in the water that stops it. It's all about opportunity. I think it's probably a little bit simplistic just to put it down to national borders.
On whichever side of the debate you fall, there is one fact which is indisputable. The pool of English coaches at the elite level of the game is pretty shallow. And the
Sky Business sponsors this report.
Still to come on The Breakfast Show, we'll be discussing the stories making news today with Al Mari in the News Review.
Liberation Day.
By popular demand, here we are.
Donald Trump. It is quite the story. Wherever it goes, on Trump 100, we go with it.
Tell us who you're looking for.
Unbelievable we've come to this.
Are you overstating the reach and significance of this deal?
Not like you said it.
From the UK.
Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
It was 10 feet from him, and all of a sudden the shots rang out.
People impacted.
I'll tell you on another day on the podcast what that was all about.
Join us wherever you get your podcasts.
People that pod together, they have a little hive brain going on. They've not had a good week.
I've had a good week. There's a teaser there, a teaser.
Okay, nothing to see here. Drama over. Full stop. Anyway, we'll get to that. She will be mortified.
So she's the first female chancellor.
I popped upstairs, made myself a cheese sandwich, and now I'm with you.
Annalise has come dressed in the magenta of electoral dysfunction. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
This is how you travel when the mafia wants to kill you. He's almost given up his own freedom, but that's the price he's willing to pay. Here, they don't just arrest and Ndrangheta mafia members, they also live among them. Time after time, I've seen the devastating impact of extreme weather and climate change.
We don't have much snow at the moment.
They've had a warm spring and exceptionally hot summer, and that means they're expecting to lose more than 3 times the amount of ice than they usually do.
Flames are still forcing people from their homes and leaving many questioning their futures.
Here was my life. We have nothing. I can't say anything. It's so sad.
This disaster is testing the resolve of everyone on this island. The only way out now is by boat.
Everything you see is devastated, and the misery being felt by people living here is repeated in towns and villages across Central Europe. Sky News, get the full story first.
Turkey is burying its dead. The loss is profound. Whole families died in this collapse, generations wiped out. The violence has penetrated the heart of the city rather than being contained to the estates around the edge, and that speaks to the level of anger being felt here.
In Sweden, police have seized a lethal stash. This is just a small sample of the deadly arsenal taken off the streets.
This is an example of an advert, really. Anyone of any age could say, I'll do that for £1 million, and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes.
I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
I'm David Blevins, and I'm Sky's Senior Ireland correspondent. I've spent 30 years reporting the journey from conflict to peace. The end of the political stalemate, the start of a new chapter for Northern Ireland. Catholics and Protestants now facing the same threat.
If we both contract COVID-19, religion's nothing.
Sky News, the full story first.
Welcome back, everyone. Mari's here. We've got our papers ready. We've got tea on hand.
Yes,
it's the
we
news
do.
review. Good to have you with us, Mari. We're going to kick off with the front page of The Guardian, a really fascinating article from the paper with Prince Harry. They've accompanied him on a trip to Kyiv, which I didn't know. He's thought of as a bit of a cult hero in Ukraine. This is all to promote the Invictus Games and the work and the charity that helps injured servicemen and women. And on this trip, of course, The Guardian over the years has been very critical of the royal family, and Prince Harry is very sceptical of the media. So the two don't necessarily go hand in hand. But some key takeaways from the article in particular, it did touch upon his recent interviews in the media, his book, and asked by The Guardian, at any point, has he looked back and regretted that? He said, my conscience is clear. It had to happen. It did happen. I don't look back with any guilt or anger over that. But he does reveal in this interview that he does want to spend more time in the UK. It feels, obviously, this trip in Ukraine is very much a project, a work project, but his relationship with the king, his father, is a personal mission to fix and mend. But I thought it was quite an interesting take to match up and go on this trip with The Guardian, and also touching upon the sheer unnecessary nature of the war in Ukraine too. So I thought another interview from Prince Harry, but a different tone this time round.
Yeah, and I think it is, whether, irrespective of how you feel about Prince Harry and the kind of royal spat, drama, etc., he is somebody who has always done a lot of campaigning for veterans and has always explained and been very vocal about his support for veterans and their contribution, and you know that it's important not to forget their contribution after they come back. And so also I think it's a moment for him to perhaps try and remind British public of what he cares about, what he does, and some of his positive contributions. Whether you agree with him on everything or not, I think most people will agree that supporting veterans would obviously be a positive contribution.
Absolutely. He says also in this interview that he is not unhappy. He says a lot of the press like to portray him as this man that's downtrodden. He's very happy, but he does want to spend more time in the UK. And interestingly, when out in Ukraine, he's seen as quite a popular figure. People want to come up to him, talk to him, and he's very, well known for being at ease with, how should we say, the ordinary folk.
Yeah.
So interesting one, that. Do go and take a look at that article in hard copy or online. Shall we move on to the iPaper, Maury? And this is their front page, isn't it? It's all about prisons and how they want, potentially, is this the story, ex-prisoners, ex-offenders, to help with a new plan to boost the UK defence systems and prisons.
Yeah, this is interesting because there is about 5,000 vacancies when it comes to welding in the defence sector. And what the Eye is reporting is that the defence industry is wanting to recruit a particular group of people. So they want to recruit young offenders to work as welders, to plug that skills gap. And actually, it's partly because we've had this big boost in defence spending from Labour since they came into power, the largest rearmament since the Cold War. And so prisoners, ex-offenders with criminal convictions could potentially be joining this 4-year apprenticeship scheme in which they will then become welders for the defence industry. And the difficulty is that what some of the industry experts are saying is that actually the skills gap that we have in some of these defence sectors could potentially put military plans at risk. So could put John Healey or the Prime Minister's plans in jeopardy if we can't necessarily deliver on some of those promises, if we don't have the manpower to build and create some of those pieces of machinery, etc. So an interesting one to watch in terms of the fact that actually this is potentially a positive story. We keep talking about rehabilitation of prison offenders and how recidivism is part of the big problem of the prison population, those who essentially go out of prison and then they end up reoffending and back in prison and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And perhaps something like this might have a positive impact on that, in which people have a career, something to come into, something to look forward to, and a programme to kind of create a new future. We'll have to see, but it is interesting if it works.
OK. Let's move on to... What is this paper in? It's the Eye too. We're sticking with the Eye, actually. And this is all about... You would have seen flags, Union flag, the St George's flag, up and down high streets, on lampposts that have been going up recently. This story, flag wars are scaring foreign students and universities alike. So anti-immigrant protests that we've seen and these flag wars, as they're called, universities are saying what it's doing is it's putting off foreign students from coming to the UK, who obviously bring a huge amount of money and wealth to the United Kingdom. But the flag movement has really worried international students and whether they need to take any precautions before coming to study in London. It's making people second guess whether it's the right choice for them to come to the UK because of the fears around the intent of flags that are going up. And people are quoted in this article saying anyone a bit worried about going what university is like, you second guess, you don't want to come. And obviously, University College London next week, everyone's sort of worried in particular about what this message is across the country, across the world, and the views of people who decide that they want to put these up. I remember last weekend heading out into my high street with my 2 kiddos and suddenly seeing flags along the high street and thinking, I love this country, absolutely love it, but I didn't see these flags during the Euros, didn't see these flags during when the women won the World Cup. So it's the intent and it's how you feel around that. So could this be damaging for the economy? We'll have to see. It feels that the article potentially is a bit of a knee-jerk reaction to that because how that trickles down into the economy. But I remember growing up when there were sentiments about saying how there's no black in the Union Jack. So I think you have to take a real understanding of what communities might feel around the flag, the meaning and how that penetrates your story with the Union Jack or with the St George's flag. So this is one to watch. Will these flags have a hit to the economy? We'll have to see. But university students who are considering coming to the UK are second guessing. They're worried that there might be a sort of a dark side to why they're up. So I thought that was really interesting. And it hit a chord with me too. What should we move on to next?
Well, actually, it's not that far removed. Front page of The Guardian, back to The Guardian.
OK.
The Prime Minister's been talking to The Guardian about some of the protests we saw over the weekend. That huge right-wing protest in London, led by Tommy Robinson, who is obviously Stephen Yaxley Lennon in real life, convicted criminal. And what's really interesting is MPs, anti-fascist groups have been urging the Prime Minister to speak out against some of the rhetoric that has been seen over the weekend. And there's been pressure on Downing Street to be a bit more proactive in its defence of diversity. And so the Prime Minister's spoken to The Guardian and he said that people have the right to peaceful protest, but it's the core of our country's values. But then he said, we'll not stand for assaults on police officers doing their job, for people feeling intimidated on our streets because of their background or the colour of their skin. And then he talks about how the nation was proudly built on tolerance, diversity and respect. And he says, our flag represents our diverse country and we will never surrender it to those that use it as a symbol of violence, fear and division. And really, this is just a moment to exactly react to what you were just talking about. And the PM basically saying, hold on a second, we love our flags and the flags belong to everybody and they cannot be used as a justification to abuse people or make people feel uncomfortable. But also, actually, they shouldn't be and they shouldn't make anyone feel uncomfortable. And we need to make sure that we reclaim that flag back once again.
Yeah, it should be a sign of celebration and inclusion.
Indeed.
Yes, so we have 20 seconds left. All that's left to say is thank you so much for your company. We'll be joined by Matt Barbette after a short break and we'll be looking at that one-in, one-out deer by Sir Keir Starmer. We're going to take a look at the weather now, though. Well, low pressure spreading eastward will leave us with blustery showers today, and there's another area of low pressure approaching from the Atlantic, which will bring further wet and windy weather later on Tuesday. Well, this morning it's a bit mild and a windy start for much of the country, and showers in the northwest will merge to give some longer spells of rain, whilst showers elsewhere will move through rapidly in brisk winds. Now, some southern areas will see largely dry conditions and temperatures will reach the mid to high teens Celsius, which is a little below average for this time of year. And the yellow wind warning for England and Wales will remain in place until 6 o'clock this evening. Well, that finally is all from us. We'll see you in a very few minutes' time at the top of the hour with Matt Barbette. But thank you so much for your company this morning on Sky News Breakfast. We'll see you very soon.
Hear that whistle and that crunch? We know that they're coming from the south of the city where there's a column of Russian armoury.
I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides, and it's moving this way.
Fire, shouts the commander. There's a dash to safety.
We've now got to wait inside the shelter to see if there is incoming.
I'm Deborah Hames, Sky's security and defence editor. Should Russia's war with Ukraine escalate significantly, pilots like these could be called upon to go into combat for real.
Good morning, it's 7 o'clock. All eyes this morning are on the 6:15 Air France flight from Heathrow to Paris.
We're waiting to find out if it's carrying the first migrants to be deported under the government's one-in, one-out agreement.
Plus, a huge week ahead for the Prime Minister with Donald Trump in town. We'll speak to the Skills Minister, Jackie Smith, in the next few minutes.
It is Monday, September the 15th. So the first flight carrying migrants back to France could be in the air right now. We are waiting for confirmation about who is on board. Also this morning, the prime suspect in the disappearance of Madeleine McCann refuses to be interviewed by British police. We'll have a special report from Sudan on the desperate suffering of people whose country has been torn apart by 2 years of civil war.
These camps are full of horror stories that have been hidden from the world. Thousands of people who fled al-Fashir and lost loved ones to brutal violence and famine.
Plus, 15-year-old adolescent star Owen Cooper makes history as the youngest ever male winner at the Emmys. The People's Champion, the sporting world remembers boxer Ricky Hatton. Good morning. The first deportation flights carrying people back to France as part of the government's one-in, one-out deal are expected today. And the first could be in the air right now. Mari is here still. But first, let's go straight to our Europe correspondent, Alistair Bunkle. Morning to you, Ali. What do we know so far?
For a number of reasons, I think. Firstly, the French Interior Ministry here is not giving really much detail away. I think that's for a couple of reasons. One, because, there's just been a change of government, let's not forget, last week. Secondly, I would stress that actually this issue in France is not a big deal unless you sort of live around the Calais area. It is a much bigger deal, though, for the British government. And I think the Home Office at the moment are probably remaining reasonably cagey and tight-lipped about it, because they want to make sure that these flights go ahead successfully before they then publicise it. And I'm sure, given the politics around it, which Mario will talk about, they really will want to talk about it as and when it has been completed. So there are a number of flights today, one that's in the air at the moment. There's another possible flight from London here to Paris later on. There are reports that there could be some deported migrants on. We don't know how many, and we don't know what happens to them when they get here. The assumption is, of course, they will be taken into some sort of form of immigration custody, processed, but we don't know then what happens to them beyond that point. And this is about a one-in, one-out agreement that was signed back in the summer between Britain and France. So for every migrant that is returned to France, Britain will in turn agree to accept one that will come to the UK. So that is how it's supposed to work. It's a pilot scheme that will run until June of next year. It'll be constantly monitored, but it is, and again, I'm sure Maori will speak to this, it is crucial for the Labour government to make sure that this goes right.
Ali in Paris for us this morning, thanks very much indeed. Yes, Mari is indeed here, and he's right, isn't he? The government will be hoping this works out. It is a pilot scheme. Feels like it's been a long time in the offing, having been announced in the summer. So can we read anything into the timing of this?
Well, the government would argue that these things take time to get up and running, not only because they have to detain people and potentially go through legal challenges before they can get them on these flights, but also the other side of the scheme in terms of having people coming from France over here. They had to apply online, fill in lots of forms, do lots of biometric testing, go through certain screening processes, and obviously that also takes time to make sure that you have people who are definitely approved and safe and essentially tick all the right boxes. And so the government would argue it's essentially admin time and perhaps some legal challenges, and now the thing is up and running. The difficulty is they only really have until June of next year to prove that this is a success. So not only do they need to get people on those flights, they need to actually prove that it might have a contribution to a deterrent impact. And that is a lot harder to do when you have over 31,000 people crossing the Channel in small boats this year alone, a record level, in fact. And that is really, really difficult for the government also because we have a situation where, if you look at some of the polling now, immigration has overtaken every other issue in the country amongst the public in terms of what they believe is the most important issue, even more so than the economy. And so the government is now having to really put rocket boosters up some of its policies. Now, this policy is not necessarily going to have the most dramatic impact in the world. The question is, what is it also coupled with that could potentially prove effective really by June, or if not before? Lots of talk about the PM potentially, only having up until May,
yes,
the local elections.
Yes. Mari, thank you very much indeed. Jackie Smith, Government Minister, former Home Secretary, of course, will be sat where you are very shortly. Next, though, Sudan has now been torn apart by civil war for more than 2 years, leaving millions of people desperate for food and medical care. Sky News has witnessed the dire humanitarian situation of those fleeing the fighting. Our Africa correspondent Yusra El-Bahir has met survivors of the ongoing siege of the regional capital Al-Fashir, which is in North Darfur.
These camps are full of horror stories that have been hidden from the world. Thousands of people who fled Al-Fashir and lost loved ones to brutal violence and famine. Some arrived days ago and some have been here for months.
We gave them money, but the rapid support forces took some women away who couldn't pay into a room. We don't know if they were beaten or raped. They threatened us and we got money out. We couldn't sleep from the sounds of the men being whipped and robbed nearby. All my brothers are trapped there. There is no one to take care of me.
We will bring you Yusra's full report on the situation inside North Darfur a little later in the hour, around 7:30. You can also watch it online by clicking on the QR code on the screen right now.
Now, the prime suspect in the Madeleine McCann case, Christian B, has refused to be interviewed by the British police about her disappearance in 2007. The 49-year-old is expected to be released from a German prison this week, having served time for a separate, unrelated crime. Let's get more on this with our correspondent, Alice Porter. She joins us now. So Christian B, he's due to be released. He's refused this interview by the Met Police. What other avenues are available to them?
Well, it puts the Met in an incredibly difficult situation because he hasn't been arrested in relation to Madeleine McCann's disappearance. And so whilst clearly the Met Police have put this request in, he is legally allowed to refuse that request. And we understand that that has also been a similar situation for German authorities. Now, he has been in prison for the last 7 years for the rape of an elderly woman in Praia de Luz, but he is due to be released from prison on Wednesday, and that's why, to an extent, very much the clock is ticking for the authorities. Now, he has previously denied any involvement with Madeleine's disappearance, but he's been very much the prime suspect for German authorities. They said back in 2020 that they assumed that Madeleine McCann was dead and that Christian B was most likely responsible, but they have not been able to question him there. And he still is very much a suspect here for the Metropolitan Police, who have an ongoing investigation and operation into her disappearance. The 3-year-old, of course, went missing back in 2007 on a family holiday to Praia de Luz in Portugal. She's never been seen since. Obviously sparked a huge search for her, not just with UK authorities, but Portuguese and German authorities as well. But of course, she's never been found. Now, the Metropolitan Police say that despite Christian B refusing to be interviewed by them, they say we will nevertheless continue to pursue any viable lines of inquiry. And indeed, investigations have been ongoing. In June of this year, an area around Lagos in Portugal was searched by Portuguese authorities. So this is very much an active investigation by multiple countries. But of course, to have this disappearance that has gone on for so long, this will of course be for the family of Madeleine McCann. This will be to have here that Christian B refuses to engage with the Metropolitan Police will be of course disappointing very much for them.
OK, Alice, thank you for the update there. Let's take viewers through some of the day's other stories now. A man in his 30s has been arrested. This is in connection with an alleged racial motivated rape of a woman in Oldbury in the West Midlands last Tuesday. It follows a march yesterday which was organised by members of the Sikh community in support of the woman. 14 NHS trusts are being investigated over serious failings in maternity and neonatal care dating back more than 15 years. Baroness Amos will lead the review, which was announced by the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, earlier this year. The trial of a former paratrooper charged with 2 murders on Bloody Sunday begins today. Soldier F, who cannot be identified, is accused of murdering James Ray and William McKinney at a civil rights march in Derry in 1972. The former soldier is also charged with the attempted murder of 5 others. A yellow weather warning is in place until 6 o'clock this evening for most of England and Wales, with gusts expected to reach up to 70 miles per hour in exposed areas. Travel delays are also expected, and commuters have been advised to check road conditions and public transport timetables before heading out. And Prince Harry says he'd like to spend more time in the UK. This is in an interview with the Guardian newspaper. The Duke of Sussex said his visit last week to attend the Diana Awards and visit his father, King Charles, served as a reminder of why he'd like to return.
Now, the British actor Owen Cooper has made history, becoming the youngest ever male winner of a primetime Emmy. He's just 15 and was a breakout star in the acclaimed Netflix series Adolescence, which dominated the ceremony, taking home a total of 6 awards. Our arts and entertainment correspondent Katie Spencer has more.
And the Emmy goes to Jack Thorne and Stephen Graham, Adolescence!
It was a show that broke viewing records and fueled countless conversations.
We never expected our little programme to have such a big impact, but we're really grateful that it did.
What are you looking for? This is Big Emmy winner, a British drama that was technically brilliant and left viewers reeling. Netflix's Adolescence, about a teen accused of murder and the rise of incel culture, taking home 6 awards, including one for Stephen Graham.
And the Emmy goes to Stephen Graham, Adolescence.
I'm just a mixed-race kid from a block of flats in a place called Kirby. So, for me, to be here today in front of my peers and to be acknowledged by you is the utmost humbling thing I could ever imagine in my life.
The drama's 15-year-old star making history as the youngest ever male acting winner.
Standing up here is just, wow, it's just so surreal. It may have my name on this wall, but it really belongs to the people behind the camera and Stephen and all the cast.
The Traitors.
A win too for another of British TV's biggest exports, reality show The Traitors, now the world's biggest selling format in the reality genre.
Thank you to our cast, our crazy cast, and our crew in Scotland who had to understand the concept that the Scottish summer is sometimes oxymoronic.
I am so excited about watching this trailer.
Seth Rogen's Hollywood satire The Studio dominated the comedy categories with its 4 wins.
I'm legitimately embarrassed by how happy this makes me.
And there were repeated references to CBS's purely financial decision to axe Stephen Colbert's The Late Show.
While I have your attention, is anyone hiring?
So do you think it would be okay if we speak about it?
But really the night was deservingly dominated by a show that was by no means an easy watch. Adolescence's impact stretching way beyond the small screen. Its unflinching commitment to reflect our times, a reminder of the power of drama at its very best. Katie Spencer, Sky News.
Now, the People's Champion. Let's talk about the reaction to the death of former world champion boxer Ricky Hatton, who has died at the age of 46. Our sports correspondent, Rob Harris, is with us now. A real shock, Rob. Only 46. Was planning a comeback fight, I think, for later in the year. And even more shocking because people absolutely adored him. He was a real character. He brought a lot of presence whenever he was on screen talking about his fights or, of course, in the ring as well.
And the fact he could draw so many thousands of fans, not just to his fights in this country, but also Las Vegas, tens of thousands. They're sort of football-style crowds, and that was the sort of affiliation that they felt with him. They had this affection and this authenticity as this working-class hero who sort of never forgot his roots as well. And, you know, we saw with so many of the tributes yesterday just what an iconic figure he's being remembered as.
Yeah, he came onto Blue Moon, didn't he? That was his walk-on song, which, of course, is Man City's tune as well when they came out to play it. And it just so happened yesterday was at the Manchester derby as well. I think it was... I saw some of the players and Pep Guardiola talking about him beforehand, wanting to win for Ricky Hatton.
And one of the great moments of his career was fighting at the stadium, the Manchester City Stadium, almost 20 years ago. Just so many fans packing into there, and you got a real reflection of the tributes, what he meant to the whole city of Manchester as well, as he felt that connection to his hometown and the fact appreciative of all the fans.
And it was interesting, I think it was Mike Costello, boxing commentator, who was telling the story about being outside a fight in LA, the queues of people trying to get in, and when they spoke to each individual person, everyone had a connection to Ricky Hatton. Everyone had a story. So his connection with fans, I think, was like any other boxer that you would have seen. He was such a people person, wasn't he?
So relatable why he was called the People's Champion. And some might associate those big Vegas fights with the defeats to Manny Pacquiao, to Floyd Mayweather Jr. But even getting the chance to have those fights gave a real sense of the status he had in the sport. He had 45 wins overall, just 3 defeats. And then he spoke so openly about the struggles dealing with those defeats over the years and the rawness in terms of his mental health. And it was one of the reasons he said he wanted to come back into the ring, which is to show those, you can take the weight off, you can get back into shape again, and you can be an inspiration. And it was just 3 days ago, not these pictures, that he was seen in training in his gym.
You say take the weight off, and in his case, that is an understatement, because he would go... He was like a roller coaster with his weight, wasn't he? He'd have to drop something like 5 stone on occasions to get down to his fighting weight, because he enjoyed himself in the meantime. Of course, it ended up becoming a problem in some ways, but he certainly was very up and down with that stuff.
Yeah, he'd been known to have a drink just a few weeks ago. He was pitched, I think, doing Oasis karaoke in a bar in Tenerife, and perhaps he just wants to live with the people, didn't want to seem distant, and, also that struggle in terms of how you cope with the limelight and you still want to live that normal life, and perhaps you want to go out and live life to the fullest as well. But, the shape he got in for fights like these shows that he knew how to hone his body into a boxing machine to be able to sort of get those big bouts. You don't just get those out of nowhere. It showed what an aptitude he had and what a longevity in his career too.
What do you think will be his lasting legacy? Will it be speaking out on mental health issues, do you think? Will it be that connection with fans?
We think of him speaking out on mental health perhaps before we heard many athletes of today doing so over the last decade or so. Very raw, very candid. Certainly rewatching some of the interviews yesterday, very blunt in terms of that need to seek help and how it benefited him speaking to a stranger and just being able to open up to them, because when you're sort of in the limelight and also then when struggling to cope without that adulation as well, it can something that's challenging for any sportsman or woman, and it's very, very difficult. And, hearing him yesterday in some of those old interviews just gave a real sense of how he tried to have that bigger message in society. And he was pursuing, obviously, this comeback. Some were questioning, should you come back? He'd been 47 by the time he was in the ring in December. But also a legacy of the boxing gym in Hyde, where he grew up in Greater Manchester as well, trying to sort of bring through the next generation of fighters and of helping to really galvanise the sport in the sort of mid-2000s.
It is interesting, isn't it? It's hard for some sports people to walk away from what gave them everything, and the idea of that comeback later in life. It seems to happen quite a bit in boxing, actually, doesn't it? A lot of them want to come back and keep boxing, well, until they drop, no pun intended.
Yeah, you do wonder, because it's obviously such a very insular sport as well. It's just you're so used to that routine in the gym, and how do you give it up as well? And also the purses are pretty heavy as well in terms of the prize money.
I'm thinking about Mike Tyson there coming back.
Yeah, I was thinking about George Foreman. George Foreman boxed. He just kept going and kept going, didn't he?
And there's Ricky Hatton at the Football Awards the other week. I was there at the PFA Awards, and he was there very much part of the football community. They're actually held in Manchester as well.
How did he seem?
Well, we see him in that image, just, someone who's a sort of great presence as well around events like that. Very much part of the fabric of the city, and also intertwined into football. And we saw that yesterday, the fact that both United and City fans were part of those tributes pre-match at the Etihad Stadium, the fact he could draw so many fans, not just from Manchester City, but so many football fans. And you've seen just the silence, and that doesn't happen for everyone, and how the Etihad Stadium paid its tribute, the fact the players as well.
Yeah. Well, Phil Foden was asked before the match kicked off about his reaction, of course, sad and upset about it, and said he wanted to go on and win for Ricky Hatton. Of course, it's Phil Foden's first game back for quite a while, and he scored as well. There is Phil Foden there, and obviously a local lad himself too. So, yes, no surprise that there was universal commemoration of Ricky Hatton at that match yesterday. Rob, thank you very much indeed. We'll be talking about that more later on Breakfast. But for now, we're going to have a first look at the papers, many of whom are leading on the sad death of Ricky Hatton. The Sun dedicates its front page to tributes. Rest in peace, champ, is their headline. The Star leads with a tribute from former boxer Barry McGuigan, saying he was a man of the people, a great man inside the ring and a wonderful man outside of it. The Mirror says, rest in peace, champ, as well. The Times says the Prime Minister has been told by Labour MPs he's in the last chance saloon as he attempts to use President Trump's state visit to regain their political initiative. And the Daily Mail claims officials at Number 10 were aware Lord Mandelson has suggested sex offender Jeffrey Epstein's first conviction was wrongful and should be challenged. Good time then to speak to the government. Baroness Jackie Smith is here now, Minister for Skills and also Minister for Women and Equalities. You've got two bosses. We'll get onto that. But what I'd like to start with, Jackie Smith, is what's happening with these flights this morning. Is this the beginning we're seeing of this one-in, one-out deal with France?
Well, yeah, of course, what the government has succeeded in doing is getting this agreement with France that means that for the first time we can detain people who've come across the channel in boats, and we have the ability to return them to France.
So the 6:15 from Heathrow to Charles de Gaulle, is that carrying some of these people?
We're not going to be talking about the details of which flights and
But it started today, has it?
But it is starting in the near future as a result of the agreement that this government has been able to reach with France as one of the things that we are doing to help to get control particularly of illegal migration in terms of boats coming across the channel.
You said it's starting. It started, hasn't it? Come on, you can confirm this to us now. You don't have to tell us if you don't want to who's on these flights.
Well, yes, it has started because
it has
the agreement...
started.
No, but what's important is that what started it was the agreement that Yvette Cooper was able to negotiate with the French that meant that we have already been able to detain people to return them to France.
Yvette Cooper no longer the Home Secretary, of course. That's now Shabana Mahmood. Does that have any bearing on this happening now?
Well, I think Shabana Mahmood has, as we've seen since she took over as Home Secretary, both built on the work that Yvette did and also shown in the way in which she's already brought together international partners, in the way in which she has taken action, that she's serious about getting to grips with this problem, that we really understand frustrates and worries people and is a sign of the way in which criminal gangs have been able to get really deep roots into illegal migration that we're absolutely determined to stamp out.
Let's look at the timing of this as well. As you say, it's now started. We've seen 150,000 people march in London over the weekend in the Unite the Kingdom march. We've seen Reform 10% ahead of Labour in the polls. Does that play a part in the timing of this?
Well, no, this is something that we've been working on ever since we came into government, but we certainly...
Pure coincidence, then, that it's happening now?
Well, it's been, as I say, it's something that we've been working on for some time and required, instead of, chasing headlines, actually detailed work over a period of time, both in terms of shifting resource into making asylum claims more quickly, deporting more people who don't have the right to be here, and this international agreement, which is at the heart of enabling us both to detain people and to return them to
when it comes to the people crossing the channel in small boats, what proportion of them end up having valid asylum claims and what proportion end up having to, potentially be sent elsewhere?
Well, quite a large proportion of them do have valid asylum claims, but that's the reason why one of the other pieces of work that has been so important has been shifting resource to make those asylum claims more quickly. Because what you need to do is, if somebody has a right to be in this country, you need to make that decision so that they can be integrated into the community, so that they can start working.
If one in, one out
works... If they
works,
don't have the right to be here, of course, you have to remove them from the country more quickly than it's been possible to do.
I'll get back to that in a second, but if one in, one out works as a deterrent, that's going to stop people with valid asylum claims claiming asylum here, isn't it?
Well, that's the reason why, as part of the deal, where people do have valid claims and, for example, have family that they are rejoining, there will be the opportunity for a route that doesn't involve giving money to the criminal gangs who've been exploiting the system for too long.
But they have to have family here first.
Well, I think if you're going to make a particular route, it's important to have a set of criteria for doing that. But asylum claims don't... Of course, asylum claims aren't only made by people who come via that route controlled by criminal gangs across the Channel. But what's important is that when claims are made, they're decided as quickly as possible. And it was all of the dither and a failure to get a grip of it by the last government that enabled criminal gangs to get the hold on this particular route that they've been able to get.
Yeah, well, if we're talking numbers, they've been higher this year than they ever have before, haven't they, so far?
I don't think they've been higher than they've ever been before, but they've been too high.
At the point in the year,
they've been too high, and that's why the range of action that this government has taken has been so important. You know, it's a move away from the idea that you simply make a headline or make an announcement, to doing that painstaking work throughout the whole of the asylum system, working with those who can tackle the criminals behind this, taking legislation through Parliament to give the authorities more powers to be able to tackle it.
But just finish off on this. The last time I looked at the Home Office figures this morning, last week, 800 people or so arrived on small boats in the UK. How many will leave this week?
We're not going to be talking about specific numbers or specific timing.
You will if it suits you, though, won't you?
This is the start of this particular bit of action.
So if you, hang on, if you won't talk about numbers, how can anyone know if it's working?
Well, people can already see that the approach that this government is taking is meaning
No, but
that
if you're publishing, the Home Office is publishing how many people are coming in, why won't you tell us how many people are leaving?
Well, because that's one specific route which it's important to get up and running in order to make sure that it works.
So you will tell us in due course how many?
I'm sure at some point in the future it will be possible to see the impact that this is having on the overall numbers of people who are coming here and the increased numbers of people who have already been returned because they don't have a right to be in this country.
We look forward to hearing if it's working or not. Look, a final question, slight change of shift. There is a deal imminent, or deal announced, I should say, on nuclear power with the US, a US-UK deal. How's that going to work? Because as much as there are an awful lot of people from the energy sector saying this is a fantastic thing, there are others worried about the security of this situation as well. I'm sure you'll be aware.
Well, what this agreement that we're announcing this week as part of the visit of President Trump will enable us to do is to speed up the delivery of nuclear power, to take back control of our energy system, to help to stabilise and to bring down people's bills. And we're doing that through agreements, particularly between US and UK companies, to build more reactors. For example, the plans in Teesside, which will enable an additional 12 reactors, leading to 2,500.
These are the smaller modular reactors, aren't they?
These are the advanced modular reactors, which can be built more quickly because they can be built, elements of them can be built in factories, for example, so they can bring that power on stream more quickly. That means that we hope and expect to be able to, that some of that power will be fuelling people's homes in the 2030s, for example. In order to do that, what we are doing is cutting down the duplication in the regulation necessary in order to develop these reactors. But we have in this country, and we will maintain in this country, some of the highest standards in the world around safety and regulation. We'll just make sure there isn't duplication there, and we can get this power on stream more quickly to take control of our energy and to protect people's bills.
When Karen Pierce was widely regarded as a very successful UK ambassador to the US, is Peter Kyle right to say it was worth the risk replacing her with Peter Mandelson? Well, look,
at that point, a decision needed to be made about who our ambassador with the US
could have stuck with her. She was doing a great job.
Well, there were a whole range of decisions that could have been made. And let's be clear, in hindsight, knowing the information that we know now, clearly Peter Mandelson wouldn't have been selected to be our ambassador. And that's why, when that information became clear last Wednesday afternoon, the Prime Minister quickly made the decision to remove Peter Mandelson to ask the Foreign Secretary to remove Peter Mandelson as our ambassador in the US.
You were in the Blair government, and he was as well. Makes you wonder why, if he cares about the Labour movement, he didn't volunteer this information himself.
Well, I think it's not for me to answer for him. He'll have to answer for himself. The issue is that when the Prime Minister realised from the additional information provided about the pretty awful emails between Peter Mandelson and Epstein,
his best pal,
when the full details of those became available to the Prime Minister last Wednesday afternoon, he very quickly made the decision to remove Peter Mandelson as our ambassador.
Jackie Smith, appreciate your time. We can't ask any more questions about your two bosses, but I'm sure you're probably grateful for that. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Still to come here on Breakfast, we'll have more on a planned protest today by parents of disabled children over proposed laws which they fear could strip away vital legal protections and support.
App gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos, analysis up at 6%. Podcasts, watching us live. Joins us live all in one place and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
I'm David Blevins, and I'm Sky's Senior Ireland Correspondent. I've spent 30 years reporting the journey from conflict to peace. The end of the political stalemate, the start of a new chapter for Northern Ireland. Catholics and Protestants now facing the same threat.
If we both contract COVID-19, religion's nothing.
Sky News, the full story first.
Welcome back. You're watching Breakfast here on Sky News. Coming up, we'll have more on the life and the legacy of boxer Ricky Hatton. But first, here's Leah.
Thank you very much, Matt. So, Sky News understands the first flights returning migrants to France as part of Sir Keir Starmer's pilot one in, one out scheme could take off as early as this morning. Speaking just a few minutes ago, Government Minister Jackie Smith said she wouldn't talk about individual flights, but it is starting in the near future. Elsewhere, the prime suspect in the disappearance of Madeleine McCann has refused to be interviewed by the Metropolitan Police. Christian B is set for release from a German prison this week, but refused an attempt by British police to speak to him about the disappearance. And Owen Cooper has become the youngest ever male winner of a Primetime Emmy after scooping the award for Outstanding Support Actor in a limited series. The 15-year-old breakout star of the hit show Adolescence was already the youngest ever nominee in the category before his historic win.
Phenomenal stuff. Massive success for that show. Mari is back. Good to see you. Let's just talk about what Jackie Smith had to say, or rather didn't have to say, about this pilot scheme getting up and running.
Yeah, very little detail on what is actually happening. She said some very kind of positive and vague things. So she said, you know, it's starting in the near future. Does that mean in the next 10 minutes or in the next 10 months? Or has the flight already left? Yeah. Well, exactly. So, you know, lots of vague things like that. She said it would be possible to see the impact of the pilot scheme in terms of deterrence that we've been talking about at some time in the future. So, again, no specifics from Jackie Smith on this one in, one out, and if these planes are taking off, how many people might be on these planes. Is it happening today? Is it happening tomorrow? We still have no more clarity from the government on that, despite obviously reporting and things that we already understand here at Sky News. The difficulty, I suppose, is that she was in a position where the new Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, is only just in the job. And some would argue perhaps maybe taking credit for something that Yvette Cooper has done. But nonetheless, Shabana Mahmood has been wanting to kind of arrive on the scene with quite a big statement. And therefore, she wants to be seen as someone who is gripping the problem and being perhaps slightly more aggressive with her rhetoric and her policies and tactics than her predecessor.
Yes, that is her reputation, isn't it? Thank you very much indeed, Mari. Now, Sudan has been torn apart by civil war for more than 2 years, leaving millions of people desperate for food and medical care. Sky News has witnessed the dire humanitarian situation of those who are fleeing the fighting. But just how did it reach this point? War broke out in the capital, Khartoum, in April 2023 between the Sudanese army and the Rapid Support Forces, which is a powerful paramilitary group. It's estimated 150,000 people have died so far in the conflict, and nearly 12 million people have been displaced by it. Armed violence spread across the country while the RSF captured large swathes of Darfur and laid siege on the last standing capital in the region, Al-Fashir. Our Africa correspondent, Yusra El-Bahir, has been to North Darfur and sent us this.
It's a drive towards desolation. The despair and suffering that has pushed millions to leave everything behind. Their camps line the edges of North Darfur, in the war-torn region of Western Sudan. We've just crossed into North Darfur, a place that's been virtually impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan. It's been ravaged by famine, ruthless armed conflict, and has been largely neglected by the world. Makeshift displacement shelters are clustered across the state. Inside, thousands are waiting for news from Al-Fashir, the besieged regional capital they risked their lives to escape.
We gave them money, but the Rapid Support Forces took some women away who couldn't pay into a room. We don't know if they were beaten or raped. They threatened us, and we got money out. We couldn't sleep from the sounds of the men being whipped and robbed nearby. All my brothers are trapped there. There is no one to take care of me.
Stories like Zahra's are everywhere in this camp, from the youngest to the eldest, all survivors of the Rapid Support Forces fighting to capture their hometown. These camps are full of horror stories that have been hidden from the world. Thousands of people who fled Al-Fashir and lost loved ones to brutal violence and famine. Some arrived days ago, and some have been here for months. All of them have told us that they're hoping the siege will be lifted and that they can return home. Even if the RSF ends their siege on Al-Fashir, nothing can erase the damage. Naldifa was heavily pregnant when she escaped the city's violence, and her newborn baby was blinded by conditions on the road. Hawa says she watched her 2 daughters get raped by the RSF in front of her and hasn't seen them since they fled in shame. Story after story of absolute brutality. Weighing on the volunteers tasked with keeping faith alive.
I'm living in a state of emotional torture and have depression from the number of cases I have to deal with, to the point where I had a mental breakdown.
Do you feel neglect from the international community?
I direct my blame towards the international community. How can they talk about human rights? Where is the humanity?
The neglect is stark in this barren hospital yard, where doctors say there's been little outside support. The last functioning hospital in North Darfur cannot afford to offer subsidized treatment to the civilians fleeing areas of extreme violence.
We need this support, yes. Either medication, either you can give money to the victims or to the ill patient, by anyhow, we need support.
The maternity ward is full of empty beds with few staff to clean them. In one of the beds, we find new mother Amani, who escaped Al-Fashir heavily pregnant and has just had a C-section delivery. Her brothers are still trapped there and don't know their new nephew has been born. The fight is ongoing for control of Al-Fashir and ultimately the fate of Darfur. With each battle, more and more women and children are finding their way here, without their husbands, fathers, and brothers.
Women, children,
we keep asking them, where are the men? And then they tell us our men have been executed.
On the camp road, we come across a rare sight, a car full of young men who safely escaped the siege, but not without scars. A bullet grazed his chin. You can't even be upset, he says. There are stray bullets everywhere. His friend in the back was hit by shrapnel. They all believe Al-Fashir will collapse, not militarily, but from the sheer weight of humanitarian needs.
If it falls, all of Sudan will be finished. So much suffering.
These stories of torment are a dark warning for the world, of the inhumanity that runs rife when cries for help go ignored. Yusra al-Baghir, Sky News, North Darfur.
Now, parents of disabled children are protesting in London today against the government's proposed Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill. They fear it will strip away vital legal protections and worsen the already stretched SEND support. Well, let's speak to the Vice Chair of Disabled Children's Partnership. It's Jane Harris. Very good morning, Jane. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
So let's just strip it all back. Why are parents out today on the streets protesting?
So parents really want the government to know that all they want for their children is the ordinary things in life. They just want a school place, a nursery place where their child can learn, where their child can feel safe and where their child can make friends. It's not about that bill specifically, it's just about improving the system, and we want to make sure that everybody understands that parents are not asking for the earth, they're asking for something ordinary, and they shouldn't have to fight for that.
And this is parents of children right across the spectrum of learning difficulties like dyslexia, autism, right up to kids, of course, who have real physical disabilities. There's concern across the board.
Yes, so there are 1.7 million children with special educational needs of some point. That includes children with speech and language challenges and all the children that you just mentioned. But the problem is there just aren't enough schools or nurseries or colleges who know how to teach these children. I sometimes actually feel sorry for teachers because they're just not being trained to do the job that they're being asked to do. They are trying their best, but we need to change the system so that teachers are trained to be able to do this, so that parents still have legal rights. There's been a bit of a debate about whether parents should have the same legal rights. We actually think those legal rights need to be strengthened, not stripped away. We have to remember these legal rights have been in place since the Thatcher government. They understood, successive governments have understood these children need extra legal protection under the law, because otherwise it's too easy for them to slip away and be invisible to the system. So we need to keep those legal rights. But ultimately, we also need to make sure that every school and nursery and college is looking at what disabled children achieve and how disabled children feel supported
supported as much as any other child. We do not have that system in place at the moment.
What's your assessment of where we're heading then? Because government will say, look, we don't have any extra money to make sure that all children have the same type of education, which they should, by the way. Do you feel hopeful?
Well, we do really believe the Secretary of State has said she wants to make schools more inclusive, and we absolutely believe that. The question is, how do we do that? And we think we really need to start with understanding just how bad the system is at the moment and understanding that every single bit of the system needs to change to make this different. So it's about the workforce, it's about teachers, it's about things like behaviour policies in schools.
Yes.
So 3/4 of teachers at the moment say that children are being unfairly punished, specifically children with speech and language challenges, which is 2 million children, because of these behaviour policies, because the rules are so rigid. You can get a detention for things like not having the right coloured pencil in class. You can get a detention in some schools for dropping a ball by accident when you're meant to be standing in line. That is not how we're going to support the next generation of children to be the best for our economy and our society.
Bridget Phillipson has sat in that chair and said to me they are changing things, they want it to be better, they don't want to exclude any children as a result. But as Leah mentioned there, this all costs billions of pounds, doesn't it? Is there a concern that the responsibility for that money is being shifted onto councils that are already hard up?
Well, I think the question is, what is the cheapest way out of this? And actually, if you put in support earlier on, you make savings down the line. For example, just children with speech and language challenges, that 2 million children, we know that if you have a problem with language at age 5, you're 6 times more likely to be behind in English at age 11, 11 times more likely to be behind in maths. So that means your school's got to put in extra support at that point. But you're also twice as likely to have a mental health problem, twice as likely to be unemployed as an adult, and 2/3 of young offenders have speech and language problems.
Early intervention saves a lot in the long run.
Absolutely. What is happening at the moment doesn't work for children, it doesn't work for families, but it doesn't work for our economy or our society.
This is so similar to what we're hearing with healthcare, isn't it? Get in early, prevent, rather than try and cure an issue later on. Do you just get a sense that, very quickly, that there is that mindset change happening?
I really, really hope so. In the health system, it's really worrying. It feels like a bit of a shameful secret, to be honest, that children are waiting longer than adults. If you imagine that you're a 2-year-old and you're told you need to see a speech and language therapist, and then you're told you have to wait for 2 years, you've got to wait double your life before you even start getting the help that you need. That is not what we should be doing to the next generation of children, because they can never get those years back.
Yeah, meanwhile, Jane, thank you. Meanwhile, parents just feel like any kind of access to help is such a fight, and it's so hard.
Yeah, that's what we hear. That's why they're taking to the streets today, of course. Thank you. Still to come here on Breakfast, we'll be discussing the life and legacy of Ricky Hatton with boxing journalist Matt Christie.
People that pod together, they have a little hive brain going on.
They've not had a good week.
I've had a good week. There's a teaser there, a teaser.
OK, nothing to see here. Drama over.
Full stop.
Anyway, we'll get to that.
She will be mortified.
Because she's the first female chancellor.
I popped upstairs, made myself a cheese sandwich, but now I'm with you.
Annalise has come dressed in the magenta of electoral dysfunction. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
This is how you travel when the mafia wants to kill you.
He's almost given up his own freedom, but that's the price he's willing to pay.
Here, they don't just arrest Ndrangheta mafia members, they also live among them.
Time after time, I've seen the devastating impact of extreme weather and climate change.
We don't have much snow at the moment.
They've had a warm spring and exceptionally hot summer, and that means they're expecting to lose more than 3 times the amount of ice than they usually do.
Flames are still forcing people from their homes and leaving many questioning their futures.
Here was my life. We have nothing. I can't say anything. It's so sad.
This disaster is testing the resolve of everyone on this island.
The only way out now is by boat.
Everything you see is devastated, and the misery being felt by people living here is repeated in towns and villages across Central Europe.
Sky News, get the full story first. Turkey is burying its dead. The loss is profound.
Whole families died in this collapse, generations wiped out.
the violence has penetrated the heart of the city rather than being contained to the estates around the edge, and that speaks to the level of anger being felt here. In Sweden, police have seized a lethal stash. This is just a small sample of the deadly arsenal taken off the streets.
This is an example of an advert, really. Anyone of any age could say, I'll do that for £1 million, and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes.
I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
Fire, shouts the commander. There's a dash to safety.
We've now got to wait inside the shelter to see if there is incoming.
I'm Deborah Hames, Sky's security and defence editor. Should Russia's war with Ukraine escalate significantly, pilots like these could be called upon to go into combat for real.
Well, the sporting world and beyond is coming to terms with the sad passing of boxing world champion Ricky Hatton, who died at the age of 46. The four-time world champ was found at his home, with police saying they're not treating his death as suspicious. Joining us now is boxing journalist Matt Christie. Rob is here with us too. Matt, it's good to see you. Tell us about the man.
Where do you start? I mean, you started this report by saying the sporting world and beyond is mourning the death of Ricky Hatton. And although when people pass in the boxing industry, the whole industry kind of unites in their grief, it seems like the whole world is uniting in their grief for Ricky Hatton. So that shows you what kind of man he was. He touched the lives of so many. He was so unique, so humble, just so funny, but an incredible fighter who really almost not saved British boxing, but he took British boxing to a whole new level.
What was it about his style that enabled him to achieve such success?
He was... British boxers before that, they're kind of... There's a stereotype, or there's an archetypal British boxer in that they stand up, they'll just use the jab, they'll be very straight on. Hatton was more Mexican in his style, the way that he would raid the body. His attacks were cultured in the boxing ring, and he was so effective. And everybody who saw him as an amateur before he turned professional knew that he was something special. And yeah, he went on and conquered the world.
And Matt, it's Leah here, morning. What struck me about Ricky was his connection, I think, with ordinary fans and how much value he placed on their love of him too.
That is the thing, isn't it? He was the everyman. He would celebrate his victories with his fans. He would seek to find solace in his fans when he lost fights. And I suppose the word is relatable. This is someone that everybody could see was on top of the world, but he was just like you. So it made people kind of focus more on their own ambitions, because if someone like Ricky Hatton could do it, we could all do it. But yeah, it's so sad that he's no longer with us. And you know, we say it's when someone passes away, we always say that the subsequent outpouring of emotion is almost, it's such a crying shame that the person that we're mourning isn't there anymore to see it and hear it. And that could never be more true with Ricky Hatton.
Yeah, I entirely agree with that, Matt. I think seeing his image on the front pages this morning, the people's champion, it is that sadness that he's not here to see that and recognise how loved he was in that respect. Just coming back to his relatability, I mean, he was pretty open about his struggles with all sorts of things, alcohol and drugs as well, but without wishing to not take that seriously. I think the fact that he did cut loose after boxing, of course, his weight fluctuated massively as a result, but he did cut loose. He enjoyed going out with people. He enjoyed having fun, is what also made him relatable.
For a period of time, yeah, he was living the perfect life. He'd conquered the world in his trade. He was known everywhere he went as a world champion. Not just a world champion in his own weight class. He was regarded, and let's get this clear, he was regarded as one of the best boxers in the entire sport, pound for pound. But yeah, he would find time to enjoy himself. Some criticised him. He embraced that. He embraced that criticism. And I think he'd have been the first to admit that if he hadn't have enjoyed himself quite so much between fights, his boxing career may have lasted a little bit longer than it did, because his time at the very top, ultimately, was quite short. But that is the thing, and perhaps that is the message here, is that the vast majority of us who go out to work every day, we'll be doing that for most of our lives, and we'll continue to think we're getting better at our day job as we get older. This isn't just a boxing problem. This is a problem, I think, for many athletes, is that they get to the age of 35 and then what on earth are they going to do? And I don't think Ricky ever really managed to kind of find something to replace boxing. Boxing, without question, was the love of his life. He adored the sport. He adored everything about it. He was an advocate. He's probably the greatest advocate this country's ever had for the sport of boxing. But ultimately, when that was taken from him, it all became, it was a difficult road for him.
Matt, really appreciate your time talking about Ricky Hatton this morning. Thank you very much indeed. It is an interesting point to finish on, that emptiness that I'm sure professional sports people feel when they retire in their mid-30s, and what do you then fill it with? He was planning, of course, a comeback of sorts, but it's sad that he's no longer here, of course. You're watching Sky News Breakfast. Stay with us.
Hear that whistle and that crunch? We know that they're coming from the south of the city, where there's a column of Russian armoury.
I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides, and it's moving this way.
Morning, it's 8 o'clock. The government says the first migrants to be sent back to France will arrive there in the near future.
Skills Minister Jackie Smith refused to confirm numbers or talk about individual flights, but said this is the start.
Plus, a huge week ahead for the Prime Minister, with Donald Trump in town. We'll look ahead to the US President's state visit.
It is Monday, September the 15th. The first Channel migrants are to be returned to France. The government says they will arrive in the near future. Also this morning, the prime suspect in the disappearance of Madeleine McCann refuses to be interviewed by the Metropolitan Police. We'll have a special report from Sudan on the desperate suffering of people whose country has been torn apart by 2 years of civil war.
These camps are full of horror stories that have been hidden from the world. Thousands of people who fled al-Fashir and lost loved ones to brutal violence and famine.
Plus, 15-year-old adolescent star Owen Cooper makes history as the youngest ever male winner at the Emmys. The people's champion, the sporting world and beyond, remembers boxer Ricky Hatton. Good morning. The first deportation flights carrying people back to France as part of the government's one-in, one-out deal are expected today. The government minister Jackie Smith told this programme in the past hour that this is the start and they would arrive in the near future. Mari is here, but first let's go straight to our Europe correspondent, Alistair Bunkle, who is in Paris. Look, Ali, we had the government here in the form of Jackie Smith not giving an awful lot away on this, but it certainly seems that things have got underway.
Yeah, I've got to say both French and British governments are being pretty cagey about this, not giving much detail. I think from a British perspective, that's probably because they want to be cautious about saying too much about it and exactly when it's going to happen before it's actually happened, because it could be subject to legal challenge and therefore further delays. And although, no doubt, it'll be something that they want to publicise and publicised quite big once it happens, I think until the first migrants have successfully been put on flights to here in Paris, I think people are staying rather tight-lipped about it. There's been a flight that landed this morning from London, an early morning flight. It's our understanding that there were no migrants being deported on that particular Air France flight. There are multiple flights throughout the day. There's rumours that it could be today, could be tomorrow. What we are hearing is that because it's a one-in, one-out scheme, so for every migrant that is returned to France, France will then send a migrant to the UK who has been processed and who has a valid claim for asylum in the UK. And we understand that the first ones will be sent to the UK this coming Saturday. So, yeah, I'm afraid, this morning, not a lot of concrete information, but the noises we're having from, well, particularly the British government, less so the French government, this is a process that if it's not quite yet underway, it should be underway pretty imminently.
Ali, thank you very much indeed. Mari, yeah, they're being a bit cagey about this, not least on the numbers, right? If it has got underway, when are they going to tell us if it's working or not?
Well, it's really hard because if they don't give us the numbers, effectively, it's very hard for us to judge what's happening, how effective it might be, how effective it could potentially be in the future. The government have always said they want the numbers to increase, so it's going to be a bit of a slow start, and then hopefully they'll be able to build those up. But for now, we don't have the information, the clarity that obviously we as journalists would love to have, to be able to start to try and perhaps make some calculations about what this means for if we were to extrapolate this out over the next few months before the pilot scheme is evaluated in June.
Because they do publish every day on the Home Office website the number of people who've arrived by small boat, don't they?
Do. Yes, they absolutely do. So, yes, we have some figures and not others. And that's what is part of the problem with this is the government is in a really unenviable position where small boats crossings have ballooned over recent years under the Conservatives and is continuing to rise under them. 31,000 people coming over in small boats since the beginning of this year. And Baroness Smith, when she was talking to you this morning, she was trying to argue that actually, essentially we need to wait and see that things are happening in the near future and that we should be able to see the impact very soon. But she was very, very scant on the details. I think we can have a listen to a little clip of her now.
This is the start of this particular bit of action.
So if you, hang on, if you won't talk about numbers, how can anyone know if it's working?
Well, people can already see that the approach that this government is taking is meaning
No, but
that
if you're publishing, the Home Office is publishing how many people are coming in, why won't you tell us how many people are leaving?
Well, because that's one specific route which it's important to get up and running in order to make sure that it works.
So you will tell us in due course how many?
I'm sure at some point in the future it will be possible to see the impact that this is having on the overall numbers of people who are coming here and the increased numbers of people who have already been returned.
Let's leave that there because it is a big week this week for the Prime Minister, isn't it?
It absolutely is. Donald Trump's second unprecedented state visit, as we are continually told. And so this week, it's all about trying to make sure that they show Britain's best foot forward and essentially try and show that actually some of the schmoozing and some would say unedifying way that Keir Starmer has been kind of bustering up the US administration will all be worth it and will benefit everybody in the country and the economy. The difficulty, as we know, is that it's been massively overshadowed by difficulties around the resignation of Angela Rayner, but obviously most notably also the sacking of Peter Mandelson.
Yeah.
And the fact that Peter Mandelson was sacked for his relationship, to an extent, with Jeffrey Epstein, while we have a US president about to come to the UK, who's also being talked about and criticised for his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein as well, makes it quite awkward for the Prime Minister, and they really need some wins this week because things are not looking good within the Labour Party itself.
Tricky times. I will be down in Windsor on Wednesday and Thursday mornings for that state visit here on Breakfast. For now, Murray, thank you very much indeed. Sudan has now been torn apart by civil war for more than 2 years, leaving millions of people desperate there for food and medical care. Sky News has seen firsthand the dire humanitarian situation of those who are fleeing the fighting. Our Africa correspondent Yusra El-Bakhir has met survivors of the ongoing siege of the regional capital, Al-Fashir, which is in North Darfur.
These camps are full of horror stories that have been hidden from the world. Thousands of people who fled Al-Fashir and lost loved ones to brutal violence and famine. Some arrived days ago and some have been here for months.
We gave them money, but the Rapid Support Forces took some women away who couldn't pay into a room. We don't know if they were beaten or raped. They threatened us and we got money out. We couldn't sleep from the sounds of the men being whipped and robbed nearby. All my brothers are trapped there. There is no one to take care of me.
Well, it's well worth seeing more on that situation. We'll bring you Yusra's full report on the situation inside North Darfur a little later in the hour. You can also watch it now. Click on the QR code that's on the screen.
The prime suspect in the Madeleine McCann case, Christian B, has refused to be interviewed by British police about her disappearance in 2007. The 49-year-old is expected to be released from a German prison this week, having served time for a separate, unrelated crime. Our correspondent Alice Porter joins us now to drill down into the details. So what we know so far is that Christian B, he's set to be released soon. But the Met Police still have him as a prime suspect, Alice?
He's very much a suspect. They don't use the word prime. The German authorities are saying he's their prime suspect because it's important to stress there have been multiple investigations in multiple countries into the disappearance of Madeleine McCann. And so for the German authorities, they've been saying since 2020 that Christian B remains a prime suspect in her disappearance. Now, he has been in prison for the last 7 years for raping an elderly woman in Praia de Luz, of course, where Madeleine McCann first went missing in 2007 on a family holiday. Now, he is due to be released from prison on Wednesday. So this is why very much time is ticking for the authorities because, of course, once he's released from prison, he is then released and it will be much more difficult for the authorities to keep hold of him, particularly internationally. Now, British authorities have made this request. The Metropolitan Police made this request for an interview with him, which he has refused, presumably because he's not been arrested in relation to the disappearance of Madeleine McCann. And in fact, he's always denied any involvement with the disappearance of Madeleine McCann. He's also, we understand, he's refused to cooperate with German authorities in terms of questioning with them. So it leaves the Metropolitan Police in a difficult position. They say in a statement today that they've confirmed that he remains a suspect, that they say we will nevertheless continue to pursue any viable lines of inquiry. But it does leave the situation in a stalemate, really, in a situation that's obviously been going on for such a long time. I mean, extraordinary to think it was 2007 when the 3-year-old first went missing, and we've had, of course, it was a very high-profile disappearance, and it's led to searches, including this summer, in June of this summer in Lagos in Portugal. This was an operation that was done with a mixture of Portuguese and German authorities. So I think it's really important to stress the international element of it, but of course that makes it almost more challenging, is that you have a suspect who is in another country who's due to be released in a different jurisdiction. Of course, that makes additional challenges for the Metropolitan Police.
OK, Alice, for now, thank you. Well, let's take a look at some of the day's other stories this Monday. And a man in his 30s has been arrested in connection with an alleged racially motivated rape of a woman in Oldbury in the West Midlands last Tuesday. It follows a march yesterday which was organised by members of the Sikh community in support of the woman. The trial of a former paratrooper charged with 2 murders on Bloody Sunday begins today. Soldier F, who cannot be identified, is accused of murdering James Ray and William McKinney at a civil rights march in Derry in 1972. The former soldier is also charged with the attempted murders of 5 others. A yellow weather warning is in place until 6 o'clock this evening for most of England and Wales, with gusts expected to reach up to 70 miles per hour in exposed areas. Travel delays are expected, and commuters have been advised to check road conditions and public transport timetables before heading out. And Prince Harry says he'd like to spend more time in the UK. In an interview with the Guardian newspaper, the Duke of Sussex said his visit last week to attend the Diana Awards and visits his father, King Charles, served as a reminder of why he'd like to return.
Well, a lot of people around the world, certainly from the world of sport and beyond as well, were shocked to hear of the death of former world champion boxer Ricky Hatton, who passed at the age of 46. Our sports correspondent Rob Harris joins Leah and me now. And shocked, Rob, because he was young at 46, he was planning a comeback, but he was a big character.
Yeah, he really helped to galvanise the sport at the start of this century, bringing legions of fans with him, particularly to Las Vegas for huge fights against Floyd Mayweather Jr. and Manny Pacquiao. Yes, they were knockouts in the end, but they endeared him into the hearts of so many boxing fans. And while the defeats were painful and he struggled with the 3 in his career, there were 45 wins overall.
And he, in many respects, he was made for TV, wasn't he? In the way he spoke, and that led him to take part in reality TV shows like Dancing on Ice. And he was able, I think, to really connect with not only fans but viewers.
He seemed the ordinary guy, the working-class fighter that so many could relate to, who rose from growing up in Hyde in Greater Manchester to reaching the very pinnacle of his sport. And we particularly saw that connection yesterday at the Manchester City Stadium, the club he supported, where there were such great tributes. And one of the highlights of his career was fighting in 2008 there against Juan Lascano, the Mexican fighter, and just packing a stadium like that, so many cheering his name. And he did often reflect on the difficulties replacing those moments, the highs, the adulation, the intensity when you're having to fight. And he won admirers in his later years for speaking so openly about his mental health challenges and trying to deal with those, and how seeking help was something that should be encouraged.
Rob, thank you very much indeed. President Donald Trump will be arriving in the UK tomorrow on his 2nd state visit. The US President will stay at Windsor Castle alongside King Charles and Queen Camilla. Let's bring in the former Foreign Secretary, Sir Malcolm Rifkind. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Good morning.
What's your view on this 2nd state visit then, this unprecedented second time that he's
as you say, it is unprecedented. But then, of course, we have a president of the United States who's unprecedented as well. The circumstances are unusual. He's very enthusiastic about coming to the United Kingdom again as a guest of the king. And it's very right that Britain and America should do what they've done for 70, 80 years, had the closest relationship of any two countries in the world.
Do you think that's working in our favour now?
I think it's always worked in our favour. I think under President Trump, we've had some particular challenges to face, and it's particularly been in the range of tariffs and one or two issues of that kind. And that's something, the Prime Minister quite rightly comes under a lot of criticism. But the one thing he's handled actually rather well has been the relationship with the President of the United States, and they seem to get on for unlikely reasons. I mean, they're very, very different people. So. But the state visit is not about politics. The state visit ultimately is a link between the President of the United States and King Charles, and that's going to be where the real focus lies.
Can I push you on that a little bit? Not about politics. The invitation was presented by Keir Starmer to the President in the Oval Office. That was all about politics.
Well, yeah, no, that is an entirely fair comment. I don't think that should have happened. That's not the normal protocol. And I know clearly it was an idea that probably originated from the president's office, and he shouldn't have succumbed to that. Can I make one other point on this? Because very relevant to what you've just been asking me. The one thing I hope does not happen in this state visit is at any time a joint press conference between the president and the prime minister, because you and I and everybody else knows exactly the first question that the press, and the only question the press will be interested in.
Yes, exactly that. But listen, you mentioned there, the idea for this handing over the letter would have come from Trump's office, not necessarily.
I don't know that for certain. No, I must be fair. I do not know that for certain. But I suspect President Trump likes to do things on television. We've seen that in so many other respects. Joint press conferences on television with Mr. Zelensky, for example, which had a most unfortunate consequence. So that's a speculation. It's not a suggestion that I have any evidence about.
No, of course, but I can see why you're making the observation, because a lot of people think that the UK is just kowtowing to the US right now. Do you think that's the case?
I think the relationship with Trump has to reflect Trump's personality. I've not seen any British leaders doing what some others have been doing, saying how marvellous you are, Mr. President, everything you say is correct, we think you're fantastic and all that sort of stuff. I think that is unnecessary and it's undignified, and it shouldn't happen, even if it happens to please Mr. Trump. I haven't seen any British ministers behaving in quite that way, but they've got to be careful they don't, because that's not the proper way to deal with heads of government meeting each other.
Yeah, sycophancy doesn't carry weight as far as you're concerned.
Well, it may carry weight in the short term with Mr. Trump, but frankly, that by itself would not justify it. But you've got to be very careful, because there are many things in which we disagree with President Trump and what he's doing in the United States. There is no reason why any British Prime Minister or other spokesman of the United Kingdom should pretend that he's doing the right thing. But you don't need to attack him either if it's in the middle of a meeting which is dealing with other matters. There you should just simply say, well, occasionally we have to agree to differ. Remember, Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan had huge disagreements, but they didn't attack each other in public. And so did Harold Wilson when he refused to send troops to Vietnam at the request of the United States during the Vietnam War. So these things do happen. This is not unique to Trump. It's the way you handle them is unique, because Trump himself is so unlike any previous president we've had to deal with in terms, not of policy, but not just in terms of policy, but in terms of his own interesting and curious and individualistic personality.
I don't know if you've been part of state visits on previous occasions. Okay, interesting. Well, tell us, those of us who aren't party to these situations, behind the scenes, or at least when you're in private, away from our prying eyes, what it's like, and more particularly, how does the monarch play it?
Well, it's very, very important that you should ask that. I mean, most of my involvement in state visits was, there was a long-standing tradition that when the late Queen went, and any British monarch went on a state visit, the Foreign Secretary would accompany her. So I was able, on state visits to Thailand, to Poland, to the Czech Republic, travel with the Queen and obviously see from the inside what was happening. There's a recognition by any monarch in particular that they are not just making a personal visit, it's not just a friendly exchange, which is part of it, but it's also representing the United Kingdom. And Britain has a unique reputation in these matters, partly because of the ceremonial, which we do in such an extraordinarily colourful and professional way, but partly because the tradition of state visits by the United Kingdom monarch, either to another country or welcoming him a guest, I mean, that goes back well over 100 years.
The difference this time is that we know the monarch's views on many things. We didn't with the Queen, we do with King Charles. What do you think he makes of a man who says drill, baby, drill, when he really cares about sustainability and protecting the environment?
Well, you're quite right to say, obviously, the King, when he was Prince of Wales, spoke out on, but he never spoke on party politics, and he never attacked other governments because he knew that was not his function or his role. So he's nothing to be worried about or sensitive about. The fact that he expressed opinions as the Prince of Wales on architecture, on energy, on green issues, I think he actually made an enormously important contribution to the national and the global debate on these matters. So
let me come in.
I think he doesn't do that now.
Do you think the King might be tempted to bend the ear of the leader of the free world when it comes to protecting the environment?
Well, I think in private conversation, if President Trump was to ask him, what are your views, Your Majesty, then he might very well be willing to express them. But I don't think you'll find him making these remarks in public because it's not the role of the King. And when he was Prince of Wales, he made it clear that when the time came, when he did ascend the throne and became monarch, that would mean he would no longer be expressing views on any controversial matters, not just party political matters.
Look, final couple of questions from me, Malcolm Rifkind. We haven't touched upon the security of all of this, which is of paramount concern, not least because what we've seen a large march in London over the weekend, unite the kingdom there. We've, of course, seen the political assassination of Charlie Kirk in the US. If things were heightened already, they're even more so now.
Yes, but, you know, you can hardly increase the security that already is provided for a president, any president of the United States. The Americans themselves provide a lot of that security for their president, but when he's your guest, then the obligation is on the host country to do exactly what is required in such circumstances. So, and remember, this particular state visit is primarily at Windsor Castle. That also is less exposed to these sort of risks than it would be perhaps in the centre of London.
But do you expect to see protests? I mean, of course, people will remember, they'll visualise the Donald Trump blimp that was flown over when he came over previously.
Well, it's not a question whether I want them or would like to see them.
No, but do you expect to see them is what I'm asking.
Sure, I would be astonished if during the course of his visit, in some form or fashion, people who don't like Mr. Trump don't express their view. We're a democracy. That happens in the United States when people Americans don't like visit their country. So that's what a free society is all about, and long may it be so.
Which leads to my final question. What do you think of him?
What do I think of him? I think he's an extraordinary political phenomenon. I'm not a supporter. I don't approve of the vast amount of what he does. Occasionally, by mistake or by impulse, he gets it right. For example, encouraging European countries to spend more on defence. But most of the time, I think he's a negative force. And that's very, very sad. But he is the elected president of a majority of Americans, and I respect that fact. And I hope that what he does improve the world. I think the jury's out on that at this moment in time, to put it mildly.
Malcolm Rifkind, really appreciate your time this morning here on Sky News. Thank you very much indeed. And I will be live in Windsor Wednesday and Thursday morning for Sky News ahead of that
Thank
statement.
you very much. Take care.
There we go, that's finished. We're going to move on to a story now about NHS trusts. 14 are being investigated over serious failings in maternity and neonatal care. This is dating back more than 15 years. So Baroness Amos will lead the review, which was announced by the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, earlier this year. Our health correspondent, Laura Bundock, joins us now. Give us a snapshot of the serious failings and the worries across these 14 trusts, Laura.
Well, for too many years, I think it is agreed that maternity services, neonatal services aren't where they should be in this country, and that has led to a lot of suffering, a lot of trauma, and in some cases deaths as well when it comes to these services. So this rapid review was ordered by the Health Secretary to look at what's been going on, to look at why we've had so many previous reports and yet nothing's changed enough. So initially we were told there'll be 10 trusts looked at. That's now gone up to 14. And these are trusts from across the country, not just in big built-up areas, but in rural areas as well. There's some familiar names there: East Kent, Morecambe Bay, Shrewsbury and Telsbury, which you will associate, Telford, you'll associate with these sorts of things. And I think the idea is they'll look at what has and what hasn't been achieved there and what more needs to be done. But I think there are areas like Oxford, which we've featured before, where, you know, hundreds and hundreds of women have now come forward with these awful stories, really upsetting experiences, not being listened to, with some dreadful and very disturbing outcomes. So this is what the intention is. However, many of those who've been campaigning for this kind of review say, look, it's simply not going to address some of the key issues. They're worried about accountability. They say the scope of this isn't wide enough. They're not going to be looking at the role of regulators like the CQC, for example, and they're worried it's simply not going to do its job. It's going to be like all the other investigations in the past, say lots of things, and nothing actually changes. They want it scrapped completely. They'd rather have a statutory public inquiry. The Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists is worried as well by naming 14 trusts. It creates anxiety, not just for families who are using those services, but the staff who work there as well. So it's been controversial all the way along, and it's now up to Baroness Amos to try and navigate this. She insists that, you know, given the scope and the range of what she's been told she can do, it is achievable, but there are limitations because the interim report for her is due out in December this year.
OK, Laura, thank you.
Still to come here on Breakfast. A big week ahead, as we've been discussing, with Donald Trump arriving for his unprecedented second state visit. Sam and Anne will be here after the break to talk about that and their podcast, of course.
Some very familiar faces. Go ahead.
Mr. President, what can our Prime Minister say to you?
Sky News.
That's him. That's him.
He called you Daddy.
In the back.
We are
Ready.
and waiting
For you, President Trump.
Next question.
So can I ask you, sir?
Don't miss a moment of President Trump's historic second state visit to the UK as we bring you live and continuous coverage.
Did you find it exciting?
Get the full story first on Sky News.
app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos, analysis,
Up at 6%.
podcasts, watching us live.
Joins us live.
All in one place, and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
I'm David Blevins, and I'm Sky's senior Ireland correspondent. I've spent 30 years reporting the journey from conflict to peace. The end of the political stalemate, the start of a new chapter for Northern Ireland. Catholics and Protestants now facing the same threat.
If we both contract COVID-19, religion's nothing.
Sky News, the full story first.
Welcome back to Breakfast. Coming up, a history-making Emmy win for a British actor last night. We'll be discussing the highlights, and there are plenty. But first, Leah's got the top story.
Thanks, Matt. Sky News understands the first flights returning migrants to France as part of Sir Keir Starmer's pilot one-in, one-out scheme could take off as early as this morning. But speaking to us on this show, Government Minister Jackie Smith said she wouldn't talk about individual flights, but says it is starting in the near future. Elsewhere, the prime suspect in the disappearance of Madeleine McCann has refused to be interviewed by the Metropolitan Police. Christian B is set for release from a German prison this week, but refused an attempt by British police to speak to him about the disappearance. And Owen Cooper has become the youngest ever male winner of a Primetime Emmy after scooping the award for Outstanding Support Actor in a Limited Series. The 15-year-old breakout star of the hit show Adolescence was already the youngest ever nominee in the category before his historic win.
Really hard to argue with that. Deserved it. Such a great performance. Really great performance. Anyway, with less than 48 hours now until Donald Trump's state visit, it's sure to be a huge week for Sir Keir Starmer after several big weeks for other reasons. Joining me now to digest the week ahead is Anne McElvoy, Executive Editor at Politico and Sky's Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates. Good to see you both because, of course, you're talking about this on your podcast. I've had a quick look. The latest episode, Can Trump Lift Starmer's Gloom? What do you reckon, Anne? Without obviously giving away everything that's in the episode, can he lift Starmer's gloom?
Yeah, spoiler alert here. Well, I think he can possibly, if not lift the gloom, because it does go quite deep, and we talk about that, and it's really dominating the political news cycle is this crisis in Number 10 over the fallout from that abrupt sacking of Peter Mandelson and what looks a bit like a revenge movie playing out there in many ways, and a lot of blame shifting. But it is a state visit, it is all the pomp and circumstance, and it does mean that the optics shift a bit. Donald Trump always brings the limelight with him, doesn't he? So if Keir Starmer has one thing to be grateful for this morning, it will be that he's got something else in the diary other than dealing with Peter Mandelson. But the guy he's got in the diary, you can see just the images of him there. Well, he's very unpredictable. He's maverick. Let's see how that plays out.
Yes, but Sam, behind closed doors, I mean, surely they're going to discuss that because Mandelson was on a charm offensive with Donald Trump prior to this, and they both knew Jeffrey Epstein too.
I might have missed it, but I haven't seen any conversations between Keir Starmer and Donald Trump since the whole affair involving Peter Mandelson that led to his sacking last week blow up. You're right. Keir Starmer is in a position of peril right now. So while Anne is looking optimistically at the idea that Donald Trump brings with him the limelight, the intractable problems, it feels like, for Downing Street do not go away. What we're having right now is a blame game inside Number 10 and inside the Parliamentary Labour Party, who are asking some pretty tough questions about Keir Starmer's own judgment and Keir's team's judgment. The question is, there are two questions really at the heart of what's going on. Did somebody keep from Keir Starmer the emails, the Bloomberg leaked emails that led to Peter Mandelson's sacking? And if so, who? And if so, why? Because we're told that on Wednesday night when Keir Starmer saw them, the game was up. But I think that there's a bigger question here, which is about the fact that I've looked at the emails and I've looked at everything else that's in the public domain, and it's quite clear to me that most of the facts that led to Peter Mandelson's sacking, the fact that he was dealing with the convicted sex trafficker after the point that he had pleaded guilty, after he had been sentenced to jail. We knew that he had accepted hospitality and was still doing business dealings with Jeffrey Epstein. All of that was in the public domain before he was appointed. So the question, I suppose, then is, what was it in the Bloomberg emails that tipped it? We're told it's some of the language, the affectionate language from Peter Mandelson to Jeffrey Epstein, but the facts, Matt, were known, and shouldn't they have been a bar? We're told that the vibe was okay because the language is bad, but I do wonder whether we should, Downing Street maybe should be operating more on facts, not vibes.
Yeah, it's a very good point. Anne, back to you. When we see politicians, prime ministers over the years embattled at home, they crave the attention of the world stage. Now, I appreciate that it's the UK hosting this state visit, but nevertheless, the pictures will be beamed around the world, and not least back to the US as well. There's an element of that to this, isn't it? It's a sort of safe haven, if you like, to be talking global issues rather than domestic problems.
Yes, there are two levels to that. One is, as you say, is that pomp and circumstance, which is a great British export. It does bring people, it just brings attention to the UK in a positive way. I think it reminds people who might like to book a weekend or their holiday in the UK to do so. I think, it is genuinely, we can sometimes in danger of getting a bit snarky about all of this, but it does matter. That is a very positive thing. This, as a second state visit, clearly has another aim, which is to get some sort of deal over the line. And the nature of that deal with the US just keep changing. Sam and I discussed it on the podcast this morning, which was, we spent a lot of time talking about whether we'd get tariff relief on big things like steel and significant tariff relief. That seems to have gone out of the window, and now all it seems to be about big tech deals, some nuclear. There are other things that you can do, good bits of business for the UK, but maybe not the one we started out thinking we could get. And that's sometimes what it's like negotiating with Donald Trump. I did just add a little bit of colour from someone I know who's intimately involved with planning this. So the big job today is to get all those horses to Windsor. There's about 80 of them. And apparently, a bit like journalists and politicians, they can have off days. And they do things like go lame at the last minute, which we know would never do when we're coming on this slot. And so that's like, you're in massive kind of, but pomp and circumstance doesn't happen by accident. There's an awful lot that goes into it. Well, it's the horses, it's moving all of those servicemen and women to Windsor to be on parade so that it goes off without a hitch. That's really what we're showing off here, that the UK is really good at something. And as trivial as it sounds, those optics and those images do help the UK abroad, as long as there aren't noises off about Peter Mandelson.
Yeah, I love that idea of attracting tourists, people maybe going on Airbnb, seeing if they can book Windsor Castle. Not sure that's necessarily available. Sam, and also, Sam, I don't know about you, I never go lame as a journalist, but we'll give Anne that one for a second. Just back to you to finish it off. The other element of this is the security. I was talking to Malcolm Rifkin about it earlier on. Of course, huge security, but there are differences because it's Donald Trump. There isn't going to be that sort of public ride in a horse-drawn carriage, for example, that kind of thing, because of potential protest.
So quite a lot of this has been drawn to avoid certain types of protest, political, nonetheless. It's all taking place in Windsor, not in London. You'll remember last time Donald Trump came on a state visit, there were substantial protests then. There won't also be an opportunity for MPs to protest because Parliament rises on, certainly the Commons rises on Tuesday for almost a month-long recess for the party conference season. So just by coincidence, Donald Trump won't be able to address both houses of Parliament, as sometimes happens. Instead, he will be at Windsor for one day and at Chequers for other. There'll be a reception, I think it's at Chequers, for business leaders. That's when you'll see him with people like AI leaders, robotics leaders. In case you're wondering what that droning noise is in the background, serendipitously, a robot vacuum cleaner is just entering the room as we're talking. Maybe the AI bosses can come up with one a little bit quieter. But there is a sort of hermetically sealed element to this. You're not going to be able to get within very far of Donald Trump. He'll be flying on Marine One around the place rather than travelling in the Beast, which is the famous presidential motorcade. I think there has been a question of what's he going to do through this visit, because he's been on one already. He's been on one state visit already. He visited the UK earlier in the year. How do you keep a president with as little attention span as Donald Trump occupied for two and a bit days? Let's see whether he ends up going for a pint with Nigel Farage in the pub to keep himself occupied.
AI vacuum cleaners are meant to be smart enough to know that we are talking on television, Sam. I mean, you might need to get it upgraded. It would be remiss not to talk to you about the story that we think is happening today, the start of these deportations in that one-in, one-out scheme, Anne, with France. Very reticent, the government earlier on, in the form of Jackie Smith, to talk about the details of this. What do you make of that, just to finish off, Anne?
I believe that the details are still very complex, and the more we looked into this, the more it relies very much on everything running smoothly between Britain and France, and that you have to give a certain amount of notice for every person you want in and out. And even the notice periods are not aligned between the two countries. Well, OK, if the entire bureaucracy goes brilliantly and everyone is invested in it, maybe it will all go off without a hitch. And even if it does, I think you do come to a question that we discussed, which is this enough to have a deterrent effect? Because there is a whole, I think, problem for those who are very critical of the asylum and immigration arrangements, that one in, one out isn't really what they're asking for. They're asking for many, many fewer people in and many more out. Now, the government thinks that this is a stepping stone, which is practical, it's deliverable, it can be managed, if indeed it does work out as smoothly as they hope. But will it really have that deterrent effect? And the only way you can test that, really, is then looking at the response of the people traffickers who drive this business and to, in the end, supply and drive the boats across the channel. Do they take it seriously enough? Is it big scale enough to affect them? I think that will be the question looming over today and beyond.
The podcast dropped 51 minutes ago. Can Trump lift Starmer's gloom? We better get Sam go and sort that vacuum cleaner out. And thank you both very much indeed for the time being.
Cheers.
Now, Sudan has now been torn apart by civil war for more than 2 years, leaving millions desperate for food and medical care. Well, Sky News has witnessed the dire humanitarian situation of those fleeing the fighting. But how did we reach this point? Well, war broke out in the capital, Khartoum, in April 2023 between the Sudanese army and the Rapid Support Forces, a powerful paramilitary group. It's estimated 150,000 people have died in the conflict so far. And nearly 12 million people have been displaced. Armed violence spread across the country while the RSF captured large swathes of Darfur and laid siege on the last standing capital in the region, Al-Fashir. Well, our Africa correspondent, Yusuf El-Bagir, has been to North Darfur and she sent us this special report.
It's a drive towards desolation. The despair and suffering that has pushed millions to leave everything behind. Their camps line the edges of North Darfur, in the war-torn region of Western Sudan. We've just crossed into North Darfur, a place that's been virtually impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan. It's been ravaged by famine, ruthless armed conflict, and has been largely neglected by the world. Makeshift displacement shelters are clustered across the state. Inside, thousands are waiting for news from Al-Fashir, the besieged regional capital they risked their lives to escape.
We gave them money, but the Rapid Support Forces took some women away who couldn't pay into a room. We don't know if they were beaten or raped. They threatened us and we got money out. We couldn't sleep from the sounds of the men being whipped and robbed nearby. All my brothers are trapped there. There is no one to take care of me.
Stories like Zahra's are everywhere in this camp, from the youngest to the eldest, all survivors of the Rapid Support Forces fighting to capture their hometown. These camps are full of horror stories that have been hidden from the world. Thousands of people who fled Al-Fashir and lost loved ones to brutal violence and famine. Some arrived days ago and some have been here for months. All of them have told us that they're hoping the siege will be lifted and that they can return home. Even if the RSF ends their siege on al-Fashir, nothing can erase the damage. Naldifa was heavily pregnant when she escaped the city's violence, and her newborn baby was blinded by conditions on the road. Hawa says she watched her 2 daughters get raped by the RSF in front of her and hasn't seen them since they fled in shame. Story after story of absolute brutality. Weighing on the volunteers tasked with keeping faith alive.
I'm living in a state of emotional torture and have depression from the number of cases I have to deal with, to the point where I had a mental breakdown.
Do you feel neglect from the international community?
I direct my blame towards the international community. How can they talk about human rights? Where is the humanity?
The neglect is stark in this barren hospital yard, where doctors say there's been little outside support. The last functioning hospital in North Darfur cannot afford to offer subsidized treatment to the civilians fleeing areas of extreme violence.
We need this support, yes. Either medication, either you can give money to the victims or to the ill patient, but anyhow, we need support.
The maternity ward is full of empty beds with few staff to clean them. In one of the beds, we find new mother Amani, who escaped al-Fashir heavily pregnant and has just had a C-section delivery. Her brothers are still trapped there and don't know their new nephew has been born. The fight is ongoing for control of al-Fashir and ultimately the fate of Darfur. With each battle, more and more women and children are finding their way here, without their husbands, fathers, and brothers.
Women with children, we keep asking them, where are the men? And then they tell us our men have been executed.
On the camp road, we come across a rare sight, a car full of young men who safely escaped the siege, but not without scars. A bullet grazed his chin. You can't even be upset, he says. There are stray bullets everywhere. His friend in the back was hit by shrapnel. They all believe al-Fashir will collapse, not militarily, but from the sheer weight of humanitarian needs.
If it falls, all of Sudan will be finished. So much suffering.
These stories of torment are a dark warning for the world, of the inhumanity that runs rife when cries for help go ignored. Yusra al-Bagher, Sky News, North Darfur.
That really is important reporting by Yusra there. Still to come here on Breakfast on Sky News. The adolescence actor Owen Cooper makes history at the Emmys. We'll have all the highlights from Hollywood's big night.
People that pod together, they have a little hive brain going on. They've not had a good week.
I've had a good week. There's a teaser there, a teaser.
OK, nothing to see here. Drama over. Full stop. Anyway, we'll get to that. She will be mortified.
Because she's the first female chancellor.
I popped upstairs, made myself a cheese sandwich, and now I'm with you.
Annalise has come dressed in the magenta of electoral dysfunction. Available wherever you get your podcasts.
This is how you travel when the mafia wants to kill you.
He's almost given up his own freedom, but that's the price he's willing to pay.
Here, they don't just arrest and Ndrangheta mafia members, they also live among them.
Time after time, I've seen the devastating impact of extreme weather and climate change.
We don't have much snow at the moment.
They've had a warm spring and exceptionally hot summer, and that means they're expecting to lose more than 3 times the amount of ice than they usually do.
Flames are still forcing people from their homes and leaving many questioning their futures.
Here was my life. We have nothing. I can't say anything. It's so sad.
This disaster is testing the resolve of everyone on this island. The only way out now is by boat.
Everything you see is devastated, and the misery being felt by people living here is repeated in towns and villages across Central Europe.
Sky News, get the full story first. Turkey is burying its dead. The loss is profound. Whole families died in this collapse, generations wiped out. The violence has penetrated the heart of the city rather than being contained to the estates around the edge, and that speaks to the level of anger being felt here. In Sweden, police have seized a lethal stash. This is just a small sample of the deadly arsenal taken off the streets. This is an example of an advert, really. Anyone of any age could say, I'll do that for £1 million, and then have to go and shoot someone.
Yes.
I'm Siobhan Robbins, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Berlin.
Fire, shouts the commander. There's a dash to safety.
We've now got to wait inside the shelter to see if there is incoming.
I'm Deborah Hames, Sky's security and defence editor. Should Russia's war with Ukraine escalate significantly, pilots like these could be called upon to go into combat for real.
Now, the young British actor Owen Cooper has made history, becoming the youngest ever male winner at 15 of a primetime Emmy.
Yeah, the 15-year-old was a breakout star in the acclaimed Netflix series Adolescence, which dominated the ceremony, taking home a total of 6 awards.
Our arts and entertainment correspondent Katie Spencer has the details.
And the Emmy goes to Jack Thorne and Stephen Graham, Adolescence!
It was a show that broke viewing records and fueled countless conversations.
We never expected our little programme to have such a big impact, but we're really grateful that it did.
What are you looking for?
This is Big Emmy winner, a British drama that was technically brilliant and left viewers reeling. Netflix's Adolescence, about a teen accused of murder and the rise of incel culture, taking home 6 awards, including one for Stephen Graham.
And the Emmy goes to Stephen Graham, Adolescence.
I'm just a mixed-race kid from a block of flats in a place called Kirby. So, for me, to be here today in front of my peers and to be acknowledged by you is the utmost humbling thing I could ever imagine in my life.
The drama's 15-year-old star making history as the youngest ever male acting winner.
Standing up here is just, wow, it's just so surreal. It may have my name on this wall, but it really belongs to the people behind the camera, and Stephen and all the cast.
The Traitors.
A win too for another of British TV's biggest exports, reality show The Traitors, now the world's biggest selling format in the reality genre.
Thank you to our cast, our crazy cast, and our crew in Scotland who had to understand the concept that the Scottish summer is sometimes oxymoronic.
I am so excited about watching this trailer.
Seth Rogen's Hollywood satire The Studio dominated the comedy categories with its 4 wins.
I'm legitimately embarrassed by how happy this makes me.
And there were repeated references to CBS's purely financial decision to axe Stephen Colbert's The Late Show.
While I have your attention, is anyone hiring?
So do you think it would be okay if we speak about it?
But really the night was deservingly dominated by a show that was by no means an easy watch. Adolescence's impact stretching way beyond the small screen. Its unflinching commitment to reflect our times, a reminder of the power of drama at its very best. Katie Spencer, Sky News.
Well, I'm pleased to say we are joined in the studio by entertainment journalist Caroline Frost. Owen Cooper, what a superstar.
Superstar in the making. Didn't take long, did it? I mean, he's said that he was at school last Tuesday. He'll be back at school in Wednesday, 2 days from now. So he's got this little chapter where he is boy wonder. I mean, it was an extraordinary performance. I don't think it was a stunt award. It wasn't to kind of break records and be interesting. He thoroughly deserved it. He owned every scene he was in adolescence, and people clearly recognised that and have awarded him appropriately, but quite spectacular. He's actually to appear in the new Wuthering Heights film as well as the young Heathcliff. That's pretty much all his IMDb entries, but they're pretty spectacular ones, so go Owen.
Yes, indeed. Who plays the older Heathcliff? It's just, the name has completely escaped me. Is that really handsome Australian guy?
Jacob Elordi.
There you go, there you go. That's a hard act to fill in for. Let's talk about the studio, because it won Best Comedy. By the way, couldn't believe The Bear was up for Best Comedy. That's not a particularly funny show, but anyway, we'll leave that there.
OK.
The studio won. Seth Rogen created it with others. I've watched it all, and I thought it was brilliant.
Great fun, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, traditionally, Hollywood loves stories about Hollywood. They love seeing themselves on screen. But what Seth Rogen has done that has been so clever is that it's been warm and affectionate and embraces all that is good and noble and ideal about making stories in Hollywood. But it has not fought shy of looking at the funny stuff, the parodying, the self-importance, the glorification, and it's sort of brought it all together. And he made history last night. He won 4 awards because he writes it, he acts in it, he directs it, he created it. It's his baby, and people have obviously loved it.
I don't know if you've seen it, Leah, but it definitely has elements of Larry David in it, of that kind of humour.
Yeah, there's some curmudgeonliness, but also great fondness and then divaness, you know. So it's a brilliant cast as well.
Just like My Average Morning.
Season 14 of Curb is coming out soon, so looking forward to that.
Good.
Any other highlights for you, Caroline?
I think Stephen Colbert winning for Best Talk Show. Well, we were just mentioning this. Everybody still thinks he's called Stephen.
Colbert?
He is called Colbert. He became Stephen Colbert. That was his persona in his previous chapter when he played a right-wing pundit and commentator and host. He's actually Stephen Colbert, but I think a lot of people have forgotten that. We'll go with Colbert as it seems to be the norm. Yes, so his show, The Late Show, has been cancelled by CBS.
Crazy.
Lots of concern in Hollywood and across the world that is because CBS are succumbing to political pressure, because he does hold the administration's feet to the flame.
Yeah, and there are deals being done for that network
all behind the scenes,
yeah.
And so he is very much seen as collateral. And interestingly, leading up to the awards night, even his rivals, even Jimmy Kimmel, said, I will be voting for Stephen Colbert. And there was a big billboard in Hollywood if you drive down the big drives. So very emotional speech. He said it's only when you're at risk of losing something that you realise how much you love it. And he said he was talking about America. He was obviously also talking about his own show.
Absolutely. I'm sure he'll bounce back somewhere. Caroline, great stuff. Good to see you.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you very much indeed. You're watching Sky News. We'll be back with all the day's top stories after this short break. Don't go away.
Hear that whistle and that crunch? We know that they're coming from the south of the city where there's a column of Russian armoury.
I'm Alex Crawford and I'm Sky's special correspondent based in Istanbul.
Look at that sheet of flames, and that has happened within minutes, and now it's coming from both sides and it's moving this way.
Good morning, good to have you with us. It's 9 o'clock. The government says the first migrants are being sent back to France and will arrive in the near future.
That's right. Skills Minister Jackie Smith refused to confirm numbers or talk about individual flights, but said this is the start.
Plus, a huge week ahead for the Prime Minister. With Donald Trump in town, we'll look ahead to the US President's state visit.
It is Monday, September the 15th. So the first child migrants are to be returned to France. The government says they will arrive in the near future. Also this morning, the prime suspect in the disappearance of Madeleine McCann refuses to be interviewed by police. We'll have a special report from Sudan on the desperate suffering of people whose country has been torn apart by 2 years of civil war.
These camps are full of horror stories that have been hidden from the world. Thousands of people who fled al-Fashir and lost loved ones to brutal violence and famine.
Also, 15-year-old adolescent star Owen Cooper makes history as the youngest ever male winner at the Emmys. And the people's champion, the sporting world and beyond, remembers boxer Ricky Hatton. Good morning. The first deportation flights carrying people back to France as part of the government's one-in, one-out deal are expected today. The government minister, Jackie Smith, told this programme in the past hour that this is the start and they would arrive in the near future. Mari's still here, but first let's go straight to our Europe correspondent, Alistair Bunkle, who's at Charles de Gaulle Airport in Paris. Ali, any sense that any flights have arrived there? Any people who came to the UK via small boats have been returned to France?
No, I mean, flights have arrived from London this morning, but no indication that any people have been deported on those flights. I mean, there are more to arrive later today, and we are hearing that the expectation is that there will be some deported migrants, probably just a very small number, on some later flights this afternoon. Nothing official from anybody official. The French government aren't saying anything about it at all. The British government, the Home Office, also being pretty tight-lipped. I think from a British perspective, they are going to want to remain quiet about it until it has happened, because there could be last-minute legal challenges or, I guess, I don't know, maybe bureaucratic hiccups along the way, and they're not going to want to sort of speak too publicly about it until it has gone ahead successfully. And then I'm sure we will hear a lot about it, because they will want to make a big political point out of it. But at the moment, no news. But if it is starting today or imminently, it will be the start of this kind of one-in, one-out process. And then we do understand that the first migrants going from France to the UK will happen on Saturday.
Ali, for the time being, thanks very much indeed. Mari, the government has been clamouring to get this up and running since the deal was agreed with France earlier in the summer, and also given the backdrop of reform pushing this message about immigration, giving them a 10% lead in the polls.
Yeah, absolutely. Reform have really dominated the narrative over the summer, and now we've essentially come back after parliamentary recess in the summertime. We've had a reset or a reboost or a recharge or whatever you want to call it. There's been something happening. And essentially the government are trying to demonstrate that they have a total grip of immigration and they can be trusted with the small boats crisis. The difficulty, of course, is this is only a pilot scheme. We don't know how much of an impact it's going to have. Jackie Smith this morning, speaking to yourself, not giving us much more indication in terms of the details, numbers and those kinds of specifics, but we can have a listen to what she did give us now.
This is the start of this particular bit of action.
So if you, hang on, if you won't talk about numbers, how can anyone know if it's working?
Well, people can already see that the approach that this government is taking is meaning
No, but
that
if you're publishing, the Home Office is publishing how many people are coming in, why won't you tell us how many people are leaving?
Well, because that's one specific route which it's important to get up and running in order to make sure that it works.
So you will tell us in due course how many?
I'm sure at some point in the future it will be possible to see the impact that this is having on the overall numbers of people who are coming here and the increased numbers of people who have already been returned.
And, you know, Mari, this is the start of a massive week for the Prime Minister, especially after a bruising couple of weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is why the Prime Minister really needs a bit of a win this week, whether it be this one-in, one-out scheme or he needs the state visit to go off without a hitch. I mean, if we look at what's been happening, we've had quite a fractious tone in the Labour Party. Lots of Labour MPs very frustrated with the operation in Number 10, with how things have been dealt with the resignation of Angela Rayner and then the sacking of Peter Mandelson. And also there's some frustration as well amongst some Labour MPs about the PM's lack of response when it came to that massive protest over the weekend that was kind of, you know, led by Tommy Robinson. And so there's a lot of dissatisfaction in the Labour Party, and Labour MPs would say on the doorstep and among Labour members as well. And that kind of febrile atmosphere is, to an extent, a huge challenge for the Prime Minister, not only because he needs to keep his own MPs on side, but MPs are starting to more and more openly talk about the possibility of replacing him or waiting until the May local elections, for instance, and seeing how really having that as almost a kind of mini referendum on Starmer's leadership, and if they don't do well, then perhaps getting rid of him, perhaps talk about, you know, replacing him with Andy Burnham. And some MPs have always spoken about replacing Keir Starmer, so some of this chatter is not new. The fact is, there's more talk about it openly, and there's also MPs that you wouldn't expect necessarily to be talking about it who are now countenancing that option.
Interesting, replacing with Burnham. There's a lot of hoops to jump through, especially for him if he desires that. But you're right, it's the unions saying they're worried this could be a one-term government, and that's why there is all that talk going on in the background. Mari, thank you very much indeed. Well, next, Sudan has been torn apart by civil war for more than 2 years, leaving millions of people desperate for food and for medical care. Sky News has seen up close the dire humanitarian situation of those who are fleeing the fighting there. Our Africa correspondent Yusra El-Bakhir has met survivors of the ongoing siege of the regional capital, Al-Fashir, which is in North Darfur.
These camps are full of horror stories that have been hidden from the world. Thousands of people who fled Al-Fashir and lost loved ones to brutal violence and famine. Some arrived days ago, and some have been here for months.
We gave them money, but the Rapid Support Forces took some women away who couldn't pay into a room. We don't know if they were beaten or raped. They threatened us, and we got money out. We couldn't sleep from the sounds of the men being whipped and robbed nearby. All my brothers are trapped there. There is no one to take care of me.
It is a powerful watch. We'll bring you Yusra's full report on the situation inside North Darfur a little later in the hour. You can also watch it now, if you like, by clicking on the QR code on your screen.
In other news, the prime suspect in Madeleine McCann case, Christian B, has refused to be interviewed by British police about her disappearance in 2007. The 49-year-old is expected to be released from a German prison this week, having served time for a separate, unrelated crime. Alice Porter joins us in the studio now. Alice, where does this then leave the Metropolitan Police?
It does leave the Met in a rather difficult position. They have been and continue to investigate the disappearance of Madeleine McCann ever since she went missing on a family holiday back in 2007 when she was 3 years old. Obviously, it was a huge hunt, really, for her. There's got huge international attention. The Metropolitan Police have continued to investigate her disappearance, and Christian B, a German national, is a suspect in their investigations, and they made a request to try and speak to Christian B, who's currently in prison in Germany, although soon to be released, and that was refused, presumably because he hasn't been arrested officially in regards to the disappearance of Madeleine McCann, and has always denied any involvement with her disappearance. Now, the Metropolitan Police say they will nevertheless continue to pursue any viable lines of inquiry, but it does put them in, of course, a difficult position. We understand that German authorities have also, over the years, tried to question Christian B in relation to the disappearance of Madeleine McCann, and he has refused that. But why this is sort of coming to a head now is he is going to be released from prison on Wednesday, where he's been serving a 7-year sentence for the rape of an elderly woman in Praia da Luz back in 2005. So very much the clock is ticking for the authorities, and the German authorities have always maintained that Madeleine McCann died, and they've said that Christian B, they believe he's the prime suspect, and they've always said they believe he is responsible for the disappearance of Madeleine McCann, something, of course, that has always been strongly denied by Christian B.
Alice, thank you. Well, let's take a look at some of the day's other stories now. And a man in his 30s has been arrested in connection with an alleged racially motivated rape of a woman in Oldbury in the West Midlands last Tuesday. It follows a march yesterday, which was organised by members of the Sikh community in support of the woman. 14 NHS trusts are to be investigated over serious failings in maternity and neonatal care, dating back more than 15 years. Baroness Amos will lead the review, which was announced by the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, earlier this year. A yellow weather warning is in place until 6 o'clock this evening for most of England and Wales, with gusts expected to reach up to 70 miles per hour in exposed areas. Travel delays are expected, and commuters have been advised to check road conditions and public transport timetables before heading out. Prince Harry says he'd like to spend more time in the UK. In an interview with the Guardian newspaper, the Duke of Sussex said his visit last week to attend the Diana Awards and visit his father, King Charles, served as a reminder of why he'd like to return. And mixed martial arts fighter Conor McGregor has pulled out of the race to become the next Irish president. He was due to address meetings later today in an attempt to get the ballot paper in place for October and the election. In a social media post, McGregor said he'd been sincere and genuine about his intentions to contest the election, but that it wasn't the right decision at this time.
Next, the British actor Owen Cooper has made history, becoming the youngest ever male winner of a primetime Emmy. The 15-year-old was the breakout star in the acclaimed Netflix series Adolescence, which absolutely dominated the ceremony, taking home a total of 6 awards. Our arts and entertainment correspondent Katie Spencer has all the details.
And the Emmy goes to Jack Thorne and Stephen Graham, Adolescence!
It was a show that broke viewing records and fueled countless conversations.
We never expected our little programme to have such a big impact, but we're really grateful that it did.
What are you looking for?
This is Big Emmy winner, a British drama that was technically brilliant and left viewers reeling. Netflix's Adolescence, about a teen accused of murder and the rise of incel culture, taking home 6 awards, including one for Stephen Graham.
And the Emmy goes to Stephen Graham, Adolescence.
I'm just a mixed-race kid from a block of flats in a place called Kirby. So, for me, to be here today in front of my peers and to be acknowledged by you is the utmost humbling thing I could ever imagine in my life.
The drama's 15-year-old star making history as the youngest ever male acting winner.
Standing up here is just, wow, it's just so surreal. It may have my name on this wall, but it really belongs to the people behind the camera, and Stephen and all the cast.
The traitors.
A win too for another of British TV's biggest exports, reality show The Traitors, now the world's biggest selling format in the reality genre.
Thank you to our cast, our crazy cast, and our crew in Scotland who had to understand the concept that the Scottish summer is sometimes oxymoronic.
I am so excited about watching this trailer.
Seth Rogen's Hollywood satire The Studio dominated the comedy categories with its 4 wins.
I'm legitimately embarrassed by how happy this makes me.
And there were repeated references to CBS's purely financial decision to axe Stephen Colbert's The Late Show.
While I have your attention, is anyone hiring?
So do you think it would be okay if we speak about it?
But really, the night was deservingly dominated by a show that was by no means an easy watch. Adolescence's impact stretching way beyond the small screen. Its unflinching commitment to reflect our times, a reminder of the power of drama at its very best. Katie Spencer, Sky News.
I kind of love it when they all just get up on stage and celebrate together. Ashley Walters at the back there, he was great in that show as well. I really enjoyed that. Well, enjoy is the wrong word. Appreciated.
It was an important
adolescence.
watch.
Yeah, really important. Still to come here. On breakfast, a Derby Day drubbing. We'll take a look at the weekend's Premier League action as more pressure grows on that man again, United boss Ruben Amorim.
App gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos, analysis. Up at 6%. Podcasts, watching us live. Joins us live. All in one place. And all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
I'm David Blevins, and I'm Sky's Senior Ireland Correspondent. I've spent 30 years reporting the journey from conflict to peace. The end of the political stalemate, the start of a new chapter for Northern Ireland. Catholics and Protestants now facing the same threat.
If we both contract COVID-19, religion's nothing.
Sky News, the full story first.
In a moment, we're going to talk about all the weekend's football, another late show from Liverpool with Dom Smith from The Standard. But first, let's reflect on the outpouring of grief and support for boxer Ricky Hatton, who's been hailed as the people's champion after his death at just 46. Rob Harris, our sports correspondent, is with us. We've been discussing it with plenty of experts in the world of boxing, yourself included, but actually his popularity transcended boxing. I've seen the likes of Beckham reflecting on this and remembering Ricky Hatton and others who are nothing to do with boxing.
Yeah, and he helped to transcend the sport. He really was known even beyond the ring. And, you know, when tens of thousands of people are going to watch his fights, not just in this country, but also to Las Vegas, it showed he had that big appeal. And I was looking back on something I did with him a few years ago, and it mentioned how when he was in front of a crowd, he said, "I've probably had a pint with half of you." And that really was his relatable nature and why he was the people's champion. And although he perhaps was remembered for those big fights that he did lose against Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather. They were statements, the fact he was able to secure those blockbuster fights in Vegas, and overall 45 wins, 3 career defeats, but it was how to cope with those defeats that proved ultimately so challenging for him mentally.
And Dom, intrinsically linked with football, with Manchester City, he walked onto his fights listening to having Blue Moon playing, which of course they play at the Etihad, and we saw yesterday Phil Foden in particular wanting to get the win for one of their biggest fans.
Absolutely, and he gave an interview before the match as well and spoke about that and the importance of Ricky Hatton to Manchester City fans, and absolutely his celebration was about that. And of course there was a minute's silence as well before the game and a minute's applause as well, which was really nice to see.
And Don, also, it finished 3-0 in the end, and I suppose the woes for Ruben Amorim continue.
Absolutely. I mean, Manchester United have now had their worst start to a league season since 1992-93, the beginning of the Premier League era, and you just start to wonder whether there's any way in which he can turn this around. I mean, he's playing a 3-4-2-1 system, a formation that suits, I would say, a grand total of 0 of his players. It's the formation he insists on using at every club. He had such success there at Sporting, but it just doesn't seem to be working at United. And I know it's early days in the season, and this is not usually kind of the time of the season when managers are going to get sacked. I don't think he will get sacked this early in the season, but it's increasingly difficult, I think, to see how he can see out this season.
Not usually the time, but Nuno's gone, so, you know, it does happen, unfortunately. Just coming back to United, I think I heard the stat correctly yesterday. In the 31 matches he's been in charge of in the Premier League, they've won 31 points, a draw a game, effectively, which is massively underwhelming for Manchester United fans. And others saying, sure, the system doesn't work, but the players should be good enough to adapt, especially the players they bought in, like Mbermo and Cunha, for example. Surely a lot of this sits on their shoulders, not just the managers.
It does, but I mean, Cunha wasn't available for the match yesterday. And to be fair, you know, they keep doing this thing, Manchester United, spending money in the attacking positions, which of course is what fans want to see. And we don't always see them spending money at the back of the pitch. And of course, they played a goalkeeper outside by India yesterday, who's soon to be out the team because they've bought a new goalkeeper. You know, I'm not sure that their defence looked like a defence that should be finishing in the top half of the Premier League. And that is the galling thing for Manchester United fans, how much money they've spent, that club, over the last 5 years, and is the squad looking, you know, better than it was 5 years ago? It's hard to say that it is.
Talking of squads that are meant to be better.
Yeah, Liverpool.
Yeah.
Someone that should lose their job potentially is the referee who gave them their penalty.
You've just been told to say that.
I think so.
I completely disagree.
I
completely disagree. It was a stone-cold handball by Hannibal.
Dom,
I mean, the clue is in the name.
Who's correct?
I would veer on that side, I'd say. I think it was a handball, and I think it was galling. I mean, you could see his facial expression as soon as that penalty was given. I think even he knew that's going to be awarded, and we may well lose this match after the hard work that Burnley have put in. And, of course, Mohamed Salah thumps in the penalty, and Liverpool get out of jail free, and they're top of the Premier League already by 3 points. It's impressive.
We love to see it, don't we? We love to see it.
They were pushing and pressing for that goal, and you know, they really did seem to stick with a quick on-field
And they were
decision.
down to 10 men by then, Burnley, as well, of course.
Yeah, rather than one of those very lengthy VAR delays without agonising over it. It was back in the ref in that sense. But Liverpool just keep on pulling it off with these late goals. They did it at Newcastle the other week as well, before the international break as well. And what a start.
And a lot of people don't think they've even hit their top gear this season as well.
Definitely
so I think if they're winning every match and they're still... and they're not even playing their best football, I think that bodes pretty well for them.
You're going to have to grind it out when you're assimilating so many new players, but let's be honest, Liverpool fans, Burnley just parked the bus for most of yesterday's match, as they were going to.
As they should do.
You should try and play to win, in my opinion, but there you go, Burnley were playing for a draw.
It's interesting you say about sort of assimilating new players, because actually on the women's side, in the WSL, Manchester United have won both their opening games, but they beat London City Lionesses 5-1, and the Lionesses have had this entire new lineup basically brought in since they gained promotion.
Which got them into the WSL in the first place,
I was talking about this yesterday, about Manchester United and the woes, and I don't feel like, ever since Sir Alex Ferguson, there's been a manager that's really got a grip of the players, the formation. And it's really worrying.
The style.
The style. And it's been like a shadow that's cast over Old Trafford ever since.
But have they had, you know, a plethora of world-class players since then either? I mean, look, we always, I think, overdo the importance of managers in football. I think they are important, and I think they inspire confidence and they pick tactics. I mean, Ruben Amorim's tactics are clearly, you know, harming Manchester United's chances on the pitch at the moment. But I'm not sure they've had the same players that they had for so much of Sir Alex Ferguson's reign. I mean, in the last transfer window, the last summer transfer window, before he left the club, he bought Robin van Persie, the best player in the Premier League, because he realised there was a chance they wouldn't win the league if they didn't go out and spend big. So he went out and bought the best of the rest, and they won the league, and he was the top scorer. So I'm not sure we've seen that aspiration from Man United, but I agree with you. The managers have really struggled.
There's a certain Jose Mourinho is currently out of work, and a lot of people, a lot of United fans saying that maybe he should come back, and also a lot of them think
and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer as well.
Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Maybe they should sell Fernandes because there's risk of discontent in the dressing room. Let's move on, Dom, to your club, Chelsea, and it was a West London derby against Brentford.
Yeah, a fourth London derby in 4 games for them.
Incredible.
And I think Brentford deserve their point, to be honest. I mean, Brentford have claimed a draw from all of the last 4 times that Chelsea have visited them. And I think, the fact that it came in stoppage time was a bit galling for Chelsea fans who thought that they'd got their win with Caicedo's late goal. But, I think Brentford were plucky, and they've lost, of course, some really key names this summer. They've lost Johan Wissa, who's gone to Newcastle. They've lost Brian Mbeumo, who's gone to Manchester United. And then they've lost their manager, Thomas Frank. But it was plucky from Brentford, I thought. And Chelsea, I mean, 2 wins, 2 draws from their first 4 games. That's a decent start. But I think these are the sorts of matches that title challengers are decided on, and they would have been expected to hold out, I think.
I'm going to unashamedly bring it back to Liverpool-related conversation, because I have to say that Henderson's cross-field ball for one of their goals was one of the passes of the season so far, by the way. It was just unbelievably good, wasn't it?
I tweeted that, actually, and I had a...
And you're a Chelsea fan. You loved it.
How about that, eh? And I had a comment saying, no, it's a pass that every professional should be able to pull off. And I said, come off it. No, it isn't. I mean, it was an amazing assist. And to be fair, Jordan Henderson, I think he's been in for a bit of stick recently because he's been brought back into the England fold by Thomas Tuchel. He's 35. Is he the sort of player that we want to see going to the World Cup? But actually, he's been proving he's a shrewd buy by Brentford.
There it is. The Bees love to see it, don't they? Sorry for Chelsea not getting all 3 points there, he says, lying through his teeth. Thank you very much indeed, Dom. Good to see you, Rob. Thank you to you as well. Still to come here on Breakfast, President Trump is to arrive for his state visit, his second. Tomorrow, US correspondent Mark Stone and our royal correspondent Laura Bundock will be here with Leah and me next. Welcome back to Breakfast. Coming up, Trump's state visit is also bringing good news for Britain's nuclear industry. We'll speak to them about it shortly. But first, the top stories with Leah.
Thank you, Matt. Sky News understands the first flights returning migrants to France as part of Sir Keir Starmer's pilot one-in, one-out scheme could take off as early as this morning. Speaking to this show, Government Minister Jackie Smith said she wouldn't talk about individual flights, but said it is starting in the near future. The prime suspect in the disappearance of Madeleine McCann has refused to be interviewed by the Metropolitan Police. Christian B is set for release from a German prison this week, but refused an attempt by British police to speak to him about the disappearance. And Owen Cooper has become the youngest ever male winner of a Primetime Emmy after scooping the award for Outstanding Support Actor. In a limited series, the 15-year-old breakout star of the hit show Adolescence was already the youngest ever nominee in the category before his historic win.
Now, the US President Donald Trump is arriving in the UK tomorrow evening for his second state visit. It's a highly unusual event, unprecedented, in fact, given US presidents who serve a second term aren't typically offered another state visit. But given there's still deals to be done on tariffs and peace in Ukraine, there will be plenty on the agenda. Leah and me have been joined by our US correspondent Mark Stone and our royal correspondent Laura Bundock. Mark, it's good to see you on this side of the Atlantic. I don't know if you came over on Air Force One or Two, but glad to have you here nonetheless.
It's exciting to be here.
Interesting to know how this is being covered, how this will go down from an American perspective.
I think they just love the whole Windsor Castle shtick. You know, that's it. I don't think there's anything more that Trump is going to get out of this, apart from, you know, flattering his own ego. He'll love it. He'll love every bit of it, even though it's going to absolutely pour with rain, apparently, for both days. But that, of course, is exactly why Keir Starmer revealed that letter back in February in the Oval Office, which was kind of an unusual thing to do. I mean, it's clearly very unusual to have a second state visit. But they knew that it was the Trump card up front. And lots of people at that moment were like, oh, is this really the right thing to do? There was kind of uneasy sycophancy around it. But so far, it's worked, right? You know, Britain is in a really good place. And I think we must remember that. You know, OK, Mandelson, turns out he had a few problems, few issues. But he and the British government, you know, he was the custodian of the special relationship. And they've played it really, really well. And I think revealing that state visit up front was kind of a smart thing to do. We're in a great place with trade.
It turns out that he and Mandelson had a mutual friend, as it happens, but we'll get onto that later on.
Yes. Laura, let's talk about the timeline then over the next few days and what we can expect.
Yeah, well, Keir Starmer said all along they're going to be surprises. This is unprecedented. This is the second kind of time he's been for a state visit. So I think they're wanting not just to pull out all the stops, but find some more stops to pull out. So if you imagine a roll of red carpet and then some, that's basically what we're going to be seeing. So we'll see the usual in terms of the Prince and Princess of Wales. We'll greet Trump and Melania as they arrive. There'll be the royal salutes going to be fired, not just in Windsor at the Tower of London. Then this carriage procession. I think the hoods of those carriages are going to be well up on Wednesday. But it's going to have this huge sovereign's escort. So expect a massive military display. And all along the route, which is confined to the Windsor estates, there's no members of the public there, you'll have members of the armed forces lining that route. So it will look quite the spectacle. That there's this guard of honour, and I'm told that there are 3 state colours involved, which is the first time they've had 3 state colours. So that's something new. Then, of course, the banquet at Windsor Castle. It will be lavish and then some.
And what's Trump going to say at the banquet? Because that's the first point. I mean, he arrives into Stansted tomorrow night, stays at Winfield House, which is the US ambassador's residence up in Regent's Park. Then he'll go to Windsor. But the first point I think that we're going to actually hear from him is Wednesday evening at the state banquet. The King will speak first, then he'll speak. What will he say? I mean, is it just going to be sort of platitudes and not very much depth? Or is he going to do what J.D. Vance did at the Munich Security Conference and start laying into Britain, perhaps in a slightly more subtle way? I mean, those are the sorts of weird, like, uneasy dynamics that the Starmer government's got to deal with.
Because from a UK perspective, certainly from a royal perspective, diplomacy is paramount here. There isn't going to be any of that rhetoric from the British side, is there?
Well, not from the King, no. I mean, the King might have been outspoken and he might not have views aligned with Trump, certainly when it comes to the environment, but he knows the rule book inside out. They've met many times before and, you know, have a warm relationship, I think. But
do they? I mean, I can't imagine any rapport at all between King Charles and Donald Trump, not one bit. But, you know, who knows? Let's watch the body language.
Yeah,
remember what happened when the Queen was at, I think, when his last state visit was at Buckingham Palace, and there was that image where it looked as though, from the TV screens, that
he walked in front of her.
He walked in front of her. Well,
Bad form.
What actually happened was he hadn't listened to what he was supposed to do, and prior to that moment, and it will have happened again, someone will tell the president, this is what you need to do. You need to go and inspect the Guard of Honour, at least look interested. That time he didn't do that. He walked in slightly the wrong place. So you can see the Queen basically saying to him, move over.
Yeah.
And then he kind of didn't, and it was all a bit...
Made you realise who was really in charge,
yeah,
doesn't it?
So, yeah.
Mark, what's your sense about how entertained President Trump will be? Because we know his attention span for meetings, diplomacy is short-lived, you know. Whether this will be, as Sam Coates was saying last hour, you know, whether
what they're going to do
he
with
breaks out, yeah, and has a pint with Nigel Farage at a
well,
local pub.
that would be a diplomatic incident if he did that. He's not going to do that. I think it's a shorter state visit than was initially planned. So 2 days, 1 day in Windsor, the other day in Chequers. The Chequers, the Prime Minister's country residence, that will be the meat. That will be the diplomacy, because this is about a lot more than just pomp. This is about trying to get Trump on side, yes, but also to get something out of it, to have some deliverables, as they say. So there'll be tech and AI announcements, almost certainly. Maybe a building on the trade relationship. Remember, Britain's in a good place on trade, but we're nowhere near as good as we were before Trump came to power. Like, he has, you know, made things a lot worse for every country.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Laura, back to you. There are also sort of breakout, if we're treating it like it's like a business meeting, there are breakout conferences going on, not least Melania and the Princess of Wales going off and doing stuff together as well.
Yeah, and that is going to be a big photo opportunity. I mean, I think all of the royal involvement is the glitzy, the sparkly photos they get out of this. And that's, I think, what will be in Trump's pocket, certainly when he heads to the political side of the trip the next day. But yeah, Melania and Princess of Wales are going to events involving the Scouts, basically, little tiny Scouts. And so, you know, the pictures are all there, aren't there? I mean, if the weather's appalling, we'll have to see Melania in her sou'wester, I imagine, and wellies, which is perhaps a picture in itself. But, I mean, they want to involve Kate, I think, as much as possible.
Yeah.
And we know Prince William, you know, met Trump when Notre Dame was reopened last year, and Trump spoke about how good-looking he was, what a great guy he was.
They had a good meeting there, didn't they? They've talked about that.
It was all very positive. William was kind of plonked there and you know, had to do his thing. And that's what the royals know they have to do. It's a fine diplomatic line they have to tread. But they know what their role is here.
I was just going to say, I think there's another really interesting dynamic to all this, and I was thinking about it over the weekend. And in fact, you know, last week we had the Reform Party conference, right? I've been to so many MAGA rallies and you know, Trumpian conferences in the United States. And what I saw from Reform, it reminded me of that, you know, the rhetoric, the setting, the speeches and the merchandise as well. Make Britain great again was kind of what they were saying. And then add to that the march at the weekend, Unite the Kingdom march. A whole range of different people. Many of them would be Reform supporters. Some of them would be further to the right of support of Reform. Tommy Robinson supporters and the like. Now, these are the sorts of people who, if they were American, would be MAGA. They would be Trump supporters. They have the same concerns over immigration, over free speech, over wokeness, and you know, making Britain great again as they would see it. So, and Britishness. It's kind of all the same thing. And so the interesting dynamic here is that we have Starmer, who clearly Reform and the right in Britain is a massive threat to him, and yet he's got America's right in the form of Trump, a very unique, very unorthodox president who he's trying to cozy up to. It's kind of a fascinating dynamic.
I know you never stop thinking about this and never stop talking about it either, because you've been doing exactly that on the Trump 100 podcast. It's a great listen. Here's a snippet.
I think this state visit, James, comes at a fascinating time for the UK and for America, politically, but also culturally, kind of socially as well. When Keir Starmer pulled that letter from his pocket, from the King, for Donald Trump in the Oval Office back in February. It was literally his trump card, and it was Keir Starmer's attempt to pull the American president in, to flatter him, to flutter his feathers. And I think the judgment back then from the British government was that this would help keep this unpredictable president on side. And to an extent, it really has helped, While Starmer and Trump are by no means close politically, Trump has said many times how he really likes Keir Starmer. He thinks that they get on very well. The trade negotiations, we all know how well they appear to have gone. Britain seems to be the envy of many other countries.
And that was Mark talking to James Matthews, who does also talk as well, doesn't just listen to Mark on the podcast as well. I know I'm teasing, but I know you're recording one of those every day this week, aren't you?
We are. Trump 100, yeah. It's our bosses came up with the idea like 3 days before Trump returned to the presidency. Yeah. They suddenly said, well, why don't you do a podcast? What, 3 days a week? No, every day. So we were doing it 7 days a week at the beginning.
For the first 100 days?
The first 100 days. Then we went down to 2 or 3, had a bit of a break over the summer, but this week we're back 5 days a week. So in your feeds every morning.
Soon to be rebranded the Trump 1000 because he's doing all the time.
That joke has been made.
Thank you both very much indeed. It's going to be a fascinating week. I'll be down there in Windsor as well, Wednesday and Thursday mornings. And as we've just heard on Trump 100, it's in London ahead of that state visit with an edge. Mark and James discussing all there is to discuss, and they bring real expertise on it. Anyway, look, we were also discussing some of the deals that are going to be done this week, not least around nuclear power. A deal has been announced between the UK and the US. Let's speak to Lincoln Hill, Director of Policy and External Affairs at the Nuclear Industry Association. It's good to see you. What's your reaction then to the announcement ahead of the state visit of this deal on nuclear power between the two countries?
Well, I think it's very good news. And what it's really about is bringing jobs back to industrial Britain through advanced nuclear. You see a deal between X-Energy and Centrica to look at advanced nuclear deployment at Hartlepool. That's a big center of industrial demand. That's about bringing jobs, bringing clean energy for more decades of prosperity there in places of the country that really need opportunity. I mean, you see another ex-coal site, Codham, in the Midlands with EDF and Holtec. Again, it's about how do we power the industries of the future, AI and data, with the power they need, clean, reliable, 24/7 through nuclear. You see today the industry employs almost 100,000 people in Britain. So it's really about bringing the jobs back to the parts of the country who really need them and about working together with our American partners to do that.
But some of us are old enough to remember Chernobyl and the effects that had. Of course, people may remember the Fukushima situation in Japan. The talk of nuclear energy, as much as some people believe in its ability to bring clean energy to people's homes, there are still concerns around the safety of it, aren't there?
Well, I think everyone can be sure that US and UK standards for nuclear safety are absolutely world-class. We have world-class standards across our operators, across the professionals in our industry, all the way through. I mean, so we take it, but we really think it's about hitting that opportunity to move forward for industrial Britain, bringing back the jobs on the assurance that this is a top-class industry, the best records on safety of almost any heavy industry in this country, and that's the basis on which we'll be going forward.
Safety is one thing, security is another, and that's another area where people have their concerns about this. Not least, we've seen plenty of nasty tricks being played by states who are not friendly to us, even on our own soil, for example. They are a target, aren't they?
Well, I think, again, nuclear power stations have immense levels of security, really rigorously planned right from the start of construction development, which is what people are talking about. We have to plan for all contingencies, and we really do a great job, I think, in layering levels of protection, anticipating different outcomes, and making sure we're prepared. We do that across regulators and the industry, and so again, people can be assured when we're taking advantage of this economic opportunity, bringing back the jobs to industrial Britain, it goes on the basis of the same world-class standards of safety and security that we've always had. And indeed, it makes us more secure when we look at the world out there because it's giving us that basis of clean, reliable, sovereign energy, a strong industrial base, which is what we need to compete in the modern geopolitical setting.
Yes. Look, when it comes to trade deals with the US, a lot of people have their suspicions that it's the US that benefits more than the UK. I accept there are deals that benefit Rolls-Royce in all of this, of course, one of the biggest and best-known British companies. But nonetheless, who wins out of this? and don't say it's a win-win. Do America come out of this on top?
Well, no, I think we're gonna come out just fine from this. I mean, you might hear from my accent that I'm from there originally, but I got a lot of faith in us over here in Britain to make a good job of this. I mean, I'll give you an example. X-Energy, yes, that's an American design, but the type of reactor that they're looking at, Britain has the most experience in. We got 65 years of experience in that, and they're talking about a big deployment. So we have the expertise, we have the experience to make the most of this kind of technology. And a lot of it is about not just, oh, the Americans might say this, the Americans might say that, is having the confidence in ourselves here in Britain to make a good show of it. And we absolutely can. We have the sites, we have the companies set up and involved, and crucially, we have the workforce activated. We have a bigger nuclear new build program than the Americans do at the moment. So if we keep on with that and build on that, in this coordination, in this partnership, absolutely we'll come out on top.
I appreciate you saying where you're from. I would never presume to guess, but glad of your time as well. Thank you very much indeed.
Sure, thank you.
Still to come here on Breakfast, we go inside one of the most cut-off regions of war-torn Sudan to witness there what is an unfolding and huge humanitarian crisis.
Some very familiar faces. Go ahead.
Mr. President, what can our Prime Minister say to you?
Sky News. That's him. That's him.
He called you Daddy.
In the back. We are.
Ready.
And waiting
For you, President Trump.
Next question.
So can I ask you, sir?
Don't miss a moment of President Trump's historic second state visit to the UK as we bring you live and continuous coverage.
Did you find it exciting?
Get the full story first on Sky News.
App gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos, analysis up at 6%. Podcasts, watching us live. Joins us live all in one place and all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
I just took a shower above the clouds. You know why? Because this is the Emirates A380. fly Emirates, fly better.
Sudan has now been torn apart by civil war for more than 2 years, leaving millions of people desperate for food and for medical care. Sky News has seen up close the dire humanitarian situation of those who are fleeing the fighting. Our Africa correspondent Yusra El-Bahir sent us this special report.
It's a drive towards desolation. The despair and suffering that has pushed millions to leave everything behind. Their camps line the edges of North Darfur, in the war-torn region of Western Sudan. We've just crossed into North Darfur, a place that's been virtually impenetrable to journalists over the last 2 years of war in Sudan. It's been ravaged by famine, ruthless armed conflict, and has been largely neglected by the world. Makeshift displacement shelters are clustered across the state. Inside, thousands are waiting for news from El Fasher, the besieged regional capital they risked their lives to escape.
We gave them money, but the rapid support forces took some women away who couldn't pay into a room. We don't know if they were beaten or raped. They threatened us, and we got money out. We couldn't sleep from the sounds of the men being whipped and robbed nearby. All my brothers are trapped there. There is no one to take care of me.
Stories like Zahra's are everywhere in this camp, from the youngest to the eldest, all survivors of the rapid support forces fighting to capture their hometown. These camps are full of horror stories that have been hidden from the world. Thousands of people who fled El Fasher and lost loved ones to brutal violence and famine. Some arrived days ago, and some have been here for months. All of them have told us that they're hoping the siege will be lifted and that they can return home. Even if the RSF ends their siege on El Fasher, nothing can erase the damage. Naldifa was heavily pregnant when she escaped the city's violence, and her newborn baby was blinded by conditions on the road. Hawa says she watched her 2 daughters get raped by the RSF in front of her and hasn't seen them since they fled in shame. Story after story of absolute brutality. Weighing on the volunteers tasked with keeping faith alive.
I'm living in a state of emotional torture and have depression from the number of cases I have to deal with, to the point where I had a mental breakdown.
Do you feel neglect from the international community?
I direct my blame towards the international community. How can they talk about human rights? Where is the humanity?
The neglect is stark in this barren hospital yard, where doctors say there's been little outside support. The last functioning hospital in North Darfur cannot afford to offer subsidized treatment to the civilians fleeing areas of extreme violence.
We need this support, yes. Either medication, either you can give money to the victims or to the ill patient, but anyhow, we need support.
The maternity ward is full of empty beds, with few staff to clean them. In one of the beds, we find new mother Amani, who escaped El Fasher heavily pregnant and has just had a C-section delivery. Her brothers are still trapped there and don't know their new nephew has been born. The fight is ongoing for control of El Fasher and ultimately the fate of Darfur. With each battle, more and more women and children are finding their way here, without their husbands, fathers, and brothers.
And women with children,
we keep asking them, where are the men? And then they tell us our men have been executed.
On the camp road, we come across a rare sight, a car full of young men who safely escaped the siege, but not without scars. A bullet grazed his chin. You can't even be upset, he says. There are stray bullets everywhere. His friend in the back was hit by shrapnel. They all believe Al-Fashir will collapse, not militarily, but from the sheer weight of humanitarian needs.
If it falls, all of Sudan will be finished. So much suffering.
These stories of torment are a dark warning for the world, of the inhumanity that runs rife when cries for help go ignored. Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky News, North Darfur.
We are just approaching 10 o'clock. Good time to get the team back in. And we're just going to chew over what happened in the Emmys last night, because it was a phenomenal success for adolescents, primarily, certainly from a British perspective. Stephen Graham winning there as well, and that young lad whose name has completely escaped me.
Owen Cooper.
Owen Cooper, thank you. There he is, 15 winning. Do you know what? Sometimes you see these child actors winning and then you never hear from them again. Just get the sense that he's going to be around for quite a while, don't you?
Yeah, so he started filming, didn't he, adolescence, when he was 14.
Yeah.
Hadn't taken part in any drama school or any kind of training, but had this authenticity that the producers, including Stephen Graham, really saw. And Erin Doherty there also.
Yeah, she won.
Best Supporting Actress too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, an all-round great win for them, and one of those movies that sort of, you know, Bates versus the Post Office, really changing minds and conversations about smartphone use and social media.
And the power of telly, even now, to, you know, make a stir, make people think, make people talk around the dinner table, and also to raise issues that, you know, otherwise you wouldn't really know about necessarily.
Shout out for The Studio, which won Best Comedy and loads of other awards. Love that.
I haven't
enjoyed
seen
watching
it.
It's very funny, very funny. Bit like us. We'll be back tomorrow with more stories.